This week, Don Pezet from itpro.tv will be joining us for our interview section. We're going to turn it into a topic discussion on security for small businesses. A technical segment will be delivered by Moses Hernandez from Cisco/Sans on finding Node.js. In the security news this week, we've got ICS, SCADA penetration testing, OAuth nightmares. Just who are the shadow brokers? Patches for the Linux sudo vulnerability. One login has suffered a massive, very devastating breach. Cisco and Netgear have some patches available for us. Let's see. Jeff wants to talk about the Chipotle breach. Joff also had one login in his stories as well as patriotic Russian hackers. All that and more on this episode of Paul's Security Weekly. This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where exploits run wild, packets aren't the only things getting sniffed, and the cocktails flow steady. It's Paul's Security Weekly. Brought to you by the SANS Institute, the most trusted source for computer security certification training and research. Visit sans.org to explore their full curriculum and latest training offerings. Gain control of cyber risk with Tenable.io, the first vulnerability management platform built for today's elastic assets like cloud, containers, and web apps. Discover a fresh, asset-based approach that prioritizes vulnerabilities while seamlessly integrating into your environment. And improve ROI with the first elastic licensing approach based on assets, not IP addresses. Tenable.io delivers the data and context you need to secure your elastic attack surface. Start your free Tenable.io trial today by visiting Tenable.io. Onapsis is the leading provider of solutions to protect ERP systems from cyber attacks. Customers can secure their SAP and Oracle business-critical platforms from espionage, sabotage, and financial fraud risks. Visit them on the web at onapsis.com.
And welcome to the show. But first, let me introduce you our host. He's never afraid to ask the question, no matter how much you think it'll make a stink. Paul Asadorian!
Welcome, everyone, to Paul's Security Weekly. This is, in fact, episode 516. It is June 1st, 2017, and I am excited to be here, as always. I have a lot of things that I want to share that have happened recently. Before I do any of that, we've got a fantastic show in here to help us with that. Of course, it's Mr. Larry Pezet here in studio. Welcome, Larry.
Thank you.
I need this keyboard. I just pay no attention to the keyboard. Sorry. Go ahead.
Some interesting stuff, unless crazy life things happen to get in the way, but they hopefully shouldn't. My understanding is that I may actually be here pretty much on the show through the remainder of summer.
Wow.
Yeah. Like
nice.
In the studio every week.
Nice. So you're not doing Sansfire?
Nope. DEF CON.
Wow.
I opted to not do Sansfire for DEF CON, and there may have been some DEF CON cancellation for me, but we'll see. You'll know some more in a couple of days and a couple of weeks.
Very interesting.
I'll fill you in on that after the show. Remind me to fill you in on that after the show.
Alrighty then. So. On the lines via Skype, Mr. Joff Thayer's here with us. Joff, welcome.
G'day, Paul. It's good to be here again. And on that Australian note, unlike Larry, I'm going to be teaching in Canberra, Australia, in July. Ooh. So I will be taking a departure from the US and enjoying a little bit of the homeland and teaching while I'm there. So
well, it's good, Joff, because you speak Australian. So, I mean, it's,
I think I speak Australian. I don't know. When I get there, I think my fellow Australians will probably say that I don't speak Australian anymore. But, that's the penalty that you get for being international.
Our special guest this evening is Don Pezet from itpro.tv. Don, welcome to the show. You're making the rounds on all the shows. It's wonderful to have you.
Hey, thanks for having me. Yeah, I think I just have to hit my secure digital life, and I'll have all the shows done.
There you go. There you go.
Nice.
You'll be right up there with Doug White, who's the only other one that's done every show. They won't let me on SDL. I don't know why. Well, not that they won't let me. We just haven't done it yet. But
You need to do like Saturday Night Live and give me a special smoking jacket.
That's
you
right.
know,
nice. I like that. It's an excuse for me to buy a smoking jacket. Fellow cigar lover.
Like you needed an excuse.
Fellow cigar lover, Mr. Jeff Mann, is here with us tonight as well. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, guys. Good to be back. Hey, I want to take a quick minute to get caught up on some shout-outs. I haven't been on for a while, and I didn't get a chance to do this last week, but shout out to B-Sides Boston, where I spoke there whenever it was, a month and a half or so ago.
Yeah, it's a nice fleece. My wife actually was wearing it. She's like, this is really nice. You're going to print some Security Weekly fleeces. I'm like,
and it's been cold,
June, but
so it's coming in handy.
That's
I mean, it was warm today. And then after that, I went to B-Sides Nashville. Always a great B-Sides. I was there with Jack Daniel. We had
Is that
a
a
great
T-shirt
time.
or a T-shirt or a fleece?
That's a T-shirt.
A T-shirt, gotcha.
And my grandson came early, so I was able to crash B-Sides Charm, Baltimore, and I promised I would give a shout out to them. Met a bunch of new people there, had a great time.
I love that how Jeff's doing this is via the T-shirt.
It's awesome. It's wonderful.
Isn't this cool? And then I went to ThoughtCon and spoke there,
Nice.
and I told the story that I said I'd never tell on camera. So there was a couple hundred people that got to hear my NSA story.
Nice.
So that was kind of fun.
Which
They
wasn't-
also
which
gave
wasn't
me a hoodie,
recorded,
but I'm
right?
showing the T-shirt.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there I went on to NOLACon.
Oh, yeah. How is
hoodie,
NOLACon?
even though it was kind of warm.
What's his name? They're a very nice couple that runs NOLACon, or at least did when I went there.
Yeah, and they have an awesome speaker dinner where they cook Cajun food from scratch for us. So it's awesome.
Very, very
They
nice
also the badge for NOLACon was a bottle opener. Which
I like it. I like
came
it.
in handy. And then this weekend I'm heading up to Chicago. I'm keynoting Hack for Kids up there, and we're going to learn how to use this thing, the Visionaire wheel, which
Nice.
is how you encrypt using a one-time pad, which is the only truly secure form of secure communication in the world.
I love it. I love it.
Take it away,
You've made
Paul.
the rounds, Jeff. It's fantastic. A couple of announcements. ITPro.tv's courses now include, and this has been updated recently, Computer Hacking Forensic Investigator V9, Kali Linux, CompTIA A+ 901, and Accelerated CompTIA Security Plus. Premium annual memberships include all video content as well as access to virtual labs and Q&A forums. You'd pay $85.70 a month or $857 per year, but we've got a special offer for our listeners and viewers. For a limited time, get 30% off a monthly membership. For the lifetime of B-Sides, there is, in fact, a B-Sides Kampala, which I had a great pre-canned speech about that's not in the teleprompter. In any case, B-Sides Kampala will be held in Uganda in October. I want to say it's the 14th and 15th of October. It is bsideskampala.com. Their call for presentations ends on July 15th, 2017. You can submit through their website. They're looking for talks on a varying number of topics, including robotics. And I'm told there's bonus points if you bring in your own robot, which could be interested getting into.
Not that you can
that
bring
country.
it back, but yeah, maybe you
Well,
can.
bringing it back might be.
You'd have to check it, right?
You definitely have to check it.
Yeah.
Yes. I don't think they allow robots.
At which point your robot will get completely crushed.
Yeah, so
and
you got to
that
check
will
it
be
so
the
they
end
can.
of it.
You got to check it so they can wreck it.
Check it so they can wreck it. That's
Chickadee,
right.
check yourself before you
That
wreck
sounds
yourself.
like a T-shirt, all you listeners out there.
It does. It totally does.
So I'll try and segue into our topic. I wanted to make a quick announcement about the Security Weekly websites. We have securityweekly.com and wiki.securityweekly.com. They're both actually SSL now. Yay! Like both all the time for the first time in history.
Hey,
Like,
welcome to the 21st century.
we don't really store any data on there. Like we don't store listener data on there. It's not
Yep.
like we're doing e-commerce transactions.
Right. Any of the forms you're submitting are searches in the wiki.
Yeah, and now really three reasons. So one, it does have our accounts that we use to access the site.
Sure.
So those should have been protected with SSL for whatever protection that gives you, right? Also, a lot of people were asking, hey, why doesn't SSL work on your site, like your security podcast? I'm like, okay, I get that.
No.
But the real driving factor is it helps your SEO. So I was like,
Wow.
well, that was just like the icing on the cake. I'm like, yep, bit the bullet. Did that. We upgraded them There's still some upgrading that needs to be done, but a lot of the heavy lifting was done. We converted from Apache to Nginx, which was an experience in and of itself. If you want to hear more on that, send us some feedback. If people want to hear about it, I will talk about it, put together a segment. I'm still working on some further security configurations, which are very interesting. Researching the configuration, Nginx is very finicky, as is JavaScript.
As is Apache.
Yeah, as is Apache. You could say the same for
Yeah.
Apache. It's just a finicky beast, but it's very powerful. I really like doing the Nginx thing, and it's almost like a little bit of coding you have to do in the config, which is nice for our particular setup. And researching all of these options individually, implementing them in a development environment, pushing that out to production. I was having fun. But now we get to our topic that we're going to talk about today, about security for SMBs. Largely, if an SMB needs a website or WordPress or a MediaWiki instance, they're going to go to the cloud and get whatever's available out there. And who knows what level of scrutiny or bells and whistles are being put on that particular website. So, Donna, if you want to kind of segue into some of the challenges that you see with security for small businesses or even the mid-market, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, you really hit the nail on the head, because if you're a small business or a medium business, you're not going to have a big dev team. You may not even have a single developer at all, and you definitely don't have a CISO and that kind of infrastructure in place. So when they need something like a website, it's WordPress that powers something like 40% of the internet these days, a huge amount. And WordPress is not a well, I don't want to say that it's not secure. It's just that it's not developed with security in mind, and it's a huge target. So it's constantly being attacked. And for a small business, it's a trade-off they make. They say, here, I can get this nice packaged software for free. I can be up and running and have some shopping cart leveraged in on it. And then they end up being vulnerable to exploits. They end up being vulnerable to all sorts of different things that can occur.
Well, yeah, and the attack surface, Don, and like you said, the barrier to entry is really low. It's a lot of functionality, but that comes with the baggage of a really large attack surface. Mm-hmm. So there's the web server component, there's the PHP backend, there's WordPress itself, there's the plugins, and don't forget, there's also the themes and things that can be abused with JavaScript and CSS inside of the site. There's the authentication issues as well.
Yep, and the big ones that I see is that as far as any of the deployment of WordPress stuff, WordPress has seen a decent amount of issues, and they've got better at doing that.
They have gotten better. They have auto updates.
But the themes and the plugins can be written by any Joe Schmo and have no anything to do with any potential security testing. And for me, the plugins and the themes are where the issue really comes.
MediaWiki has the same issue too.
Yeah.
They at least give you a warning and say this add-on is extension rather in MediaWiki.
Right.
They're like, this doesn't have security.
This isn't ours. We have no idea. Right.
And this would apply to Joomla or Drupal, other platforms like that too. And the carousel plugin, well, even inside a theme, a lot of them will include a carousel function to scroll pictures across, and those are always targeted and they're never updated. And that's a big challenge that we see. And it's just one of the many things that small businesses are confronted with, that they've got to try and deal with that. Like they didn't have the team to write the software in the first place. They definitely don't have the team to make sure that it's maintained. And so they're trusting cloud providers. And a lot of times that trust is a bit misplaced. Like, for example, DigitalOcean, right? I know I can go to DigitalOcean right now and I can deploy a WordPress server, and they will deploy it according to standard best practices within minutes. But then the moment I get in there and start messing with it, it's no longer best practices, right? Now, I can make it as unsecure as I want. And if I don't know what I'm doing, that's going to happen, right? So that happens to the small businesses. And there's no support kind of network for them. There's no real mechanism that's in place. And when you go to a conference like RSA, right? It's packed full of vendors, and you look at the solutions, those solutions are not designed for small and medium businesses. They're very expensive, or they have a high technical barrier of entry, and they're kind of just left in the dark, right?
Well, and their other option, and we've done this not with much success, is to get some help. from a contractor to help you with your website, right? Like I think there's the smaller businesses that are just like, yeah, I'm going to use whatever's out there. I think as their business grows, they kind of reach this like second tier where they're like, I don't have the expertise in house, or even if I do, they're busy with other things. They're probably doing some IT and some customer facing stuff, and so we need to go hire a consultant. Now, having been down this path, I'm less than impressed with the consultants that do WordPress. And the problem is there's so many to choose from. There are some that are very helpful and really want your business, but it feels shady to me. Like they're just going to charge me a lot of money for doing something pretty simple. And then you have to manage that consultant. And if you don't have the knowledge, you're in even worse of a position. I at least understand how some of WordPress works and can review stuff. But I think that's not a good situation to be in for small business.
Are you familiar with the company Securi?
Yes, I have heard of them.
So they have a neat approach, I think, which is they just say, you know what, screw it. WordPress is going to have vulnerabilities. It's going to get out of date on our customer site. So instead, they do a web application firewall. They say, look, you're going to route all your traffic through us, and we'll filter the attacks in line before they even get to the server. It's a nice approach, and it's not terribly expensive, and it gives you that extra level. But if somebody manages to get through that and you've got a non-updated server behind the scenes, then you've got problems there. And
right.
We're just talking cloud, right? What about all the on-premises stuff? You see that a lot where many small businesses will run their own servers because they don't want to do a cloud bill that they just can't anticipate what the cost is going to be. Yep. And so now they're trying to maintain Linux servers or other infrastructure that they're just not properly maintaining, and they end up worse off.
Yeah, and it's not a small task to maintain even a handful of systems like we do here. I mean, that's part of how I stay up to date is I maintain all of our own systems. Sometimes not all that well. I'm not asking to hack our website. Please do not hack our website. If you find something, please tell me, and we'll bring you on the show and we can talk about it. It'll be fun. But it's not easy maintaining all of these systems certainly, and there's a lot of not just the complexity, again, I'm up and running, installed, configured, and then secured as another piece, but the dependencies are just all over the map. You talked about the security service down. There's also WordFence. There's a lot of skill, even though they tout all these things as being easy, like there's a lot of skill to understand, well, when I put this security control in place, like this stuff breaks. And then why does it break?
Yep.
Sometimes it's, an hour or more of investigation. I mean, I did that on our own site. I'm like, oh, that plugin's deactivated. I'm like, so in dev, I'm going to, disable it. And then, delete it. I'm going to delete it. And I deleted it, and our page didn't load. I'm like, oh, that's kind of interesting. I'm like, now that I've got it in on a dev server, I'm like, okay. And it turns out just like one line of PHP that was referencing that plugin that when it wasn't there basically causes the entire site not to load.
Yeah.
So now I've been managing, WordPress and other things for a long. I mean, I was a systems administrator, so I should know how to fix that stuff probably in less time than it took me. But to have that skill, not everyone has that, the skills and experience to troubleshoot that.
And the sad part is that I remember the decision to move to WordPress. Was because there was so much more support available for it than the
functionality
because of the previous platform was movable type.
Yeah.
Oh my God!
Fortunately, we never did Drupal or Joomla.
But you talk about having the barrier to entry for doing some security stuff at WordPress.
Right.
Movable type, the barrier was potentially insurmountable.
Yeah.
It was awful, and then especially for someone in the small business community.
And the problem you run into too is small businesses that have been in business for a while.
Yes.
Like we were on movable type when we moved to WordPress. I can't tell you the challenges that we've had to overcome to maintain our site and make it continue to work when you've gone through those migrations of different versions of movable type and then moved it over to WordPress. Like the redirect scripts, it's like it was a coding project for me to get all of that stuff working. And I think it's all. I think we're without that many 404s now. I think.
And it's not all gloom and doom. There is something that can be done there. The challenge is that there's so many software packages out there that present themselves as being free. that,
Yep.
hey, WordPress is free, Drupal is free, Joomla is free. You can get these, and there's these shopping cart systems that are only $20 a month, or we'll just charge you 3% on the credit card transaction. Everything else is free. And small businesses jump on that, and I think we need to do a better job at educating small and medium businesses and say, look, nothing is free, and that there is this kind of run cost that you need to be factoring in, and you need to be having external auditors. You need to have your systems being examined by an independent third party, and it is going to cost you money, and it might cost you a lot of money. You might need to do an audit at $10,000 every quarter or something like that, and that's a huge amount of money. But if you're running a business, that isn't that much amount of money. If you look at your total revenues, that's an expense that they need to start taking into account. But you don't see that when you go to WordPress.org. They don't say, hey, when you deploy our software, by the way, you need to be doing all this extra stuff.
Well, by the way, this requires care and feeding, just like a pet.
Right. And the other thing, too, and I think people in small business are probably attracted to Squarespace and Wix, and I've had my experiences with those sites. And I think the cautionary thing is not so much a security issue. It's as you progress, you might want more functionality and control over your website, and that just doesn't exist on those platforms, and you're stuck with whatever they're providing.
Yep.
If you want to do something different, then you have to move, and the cost of moving, as I've discovered, is quite high, right? And that's can continue to be a cost because you've had to move platforms. I hate moving.
Well, I'm glad
platforms.
we finally brought up the money issue, because I think that's overarching what the issue is here. Money. All the vendors at RSA, they don't want to deal with the little guys because there's no money in it. They're always looking for the whales. And to be honest, if you're a small merchant or a small company, I kind of understand their point of view that they want to go out and buy a product that they know works and that they know is relatively secure when they start to use it, because more times than not, whoever's selling it to them has claimed that it's secure or passes whatever compliance standard. And we're not going to get through this conversation without bringing up PCI, because a lot of these small companies that we're talking about are merchants that are trying to do business. So, somewhere along, and I agree, I don't think the money thing is ever talked about sufficiently, because you've got vendors that are selling solutions or ignoring you, and you've got companies that are not properly educated on, like what we've been talking about, sort of the cost of doing business on the internet, the cost of doing business with the modern technology, and doing
if I use PayPal or if I use Square, I'm fine, right? I don't have to be PCI compliant.
Totally. You've shifted that blame to someone else. Oh wait.
Wait. Read the small print.
Well, the other thing too, and I think from a retail perspective, and I think the story that sparked this was something about not leaving the companies behind, but also with respects to Windows XP and that kind of stuff. A lot of retailers I get very concerned about, especially when we talk about WannaCry and all the ransomware, is if your point of sale registers are ransomware, like you're in deep trouble. And I feel like they're kind of positioned right now in a bad spot for that, because there is very little that's being done, I think, in that.
Hey, look on the bright side. It might be what finally drives them to update their point of sale.
Could be. But how many?
At the same time, the ones that are actively seeking a solution, right? So, all right, hey, maybe we've deployed McAfee antivirus on all of our machines. We want something better, right? So they go to a conference and they go in there, they do the demos, and they go somewhere like Cylance, right? I think Cylance, I think they start their quotes at something like 500 licenses, or maybe even be as low as 100, but it's not 10, that's for sure. Mm-hmm. So the new cutting edge stuff, it's like you guys said, they're looking for the whales, they're looking for those big enterprise and government contracts. So what the lower, the smaller and medium businesses are left with is practically consumer grade security, and it's just not at the level that they need. And so they're going to get things like ransomware. And are they even backing their data up? Are the backups? We've all heard this, where somebody gets ransomware and their backups got encrypted as well, because they kept it online. So just standard, simple practices that, to back Jeff up, if they followed the PCI compliance manual and did all that, they'd be fine. But these companies aren't doing it. So it boils back down to education and investment.
Is this where go ahead, Jeff.
Well, to rebut what you said earlier, I mean, one of the reasons why a lot of small companies don't try to follow the standard is because they've had some vendor come in and say, use our product and you don't have to worry about being PCI compliant. We've got you covered. And while I think in some ways that's legitimate, in a lot of ways, I think that's almost criminal that vendors are allowed to say that without properly educating their buying public as to what the small print says. But that's a buyer beware type of thing.
But what if, in using the retail and point of sale as an example, what if it's essentially in the cloud, right? The application I'm using requires a web browser. Now, of course, there's issues. If I lose internet, I can't process transactions. Maybe there's contingencies for that. But how much does that help? Does that hurt? Does it just change the problem?
It can help. For example, if you're using something like Dropbox storage, right, and you get ransomware, if you paid the extra $40 for file versioning, then you can roll back to a previous version and you just unencrypted your files, right? So that's nice. But systems like Google Drive, they don't do file versioning by default, or at least I don't think they do. So, we don't have that way to roll back. So sometimes you have the features that protect you, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you have to pay a little extra to get it. But the cloud's not perfect either, right? Wasn't it? It was 2 or 3 weeks ago that Google had the big Google Doc with the macro exploit that was going around, and that's cloud software right there, and you can get compromised the same way.
Jeff, you were saying?
I was going to say you're sort of mixing apples and oranges a little bit. I mean, there are point of sale systems that are served on web apps, and those web apps could be cloud-based, but even then, those solutions are relatively new, and small merchants are still faced with this issue of going out and having to rip out whatever they've been using and put in something new. And somebody's selling them the web-based, cloud-based solution. Somebody else is selling them, an alternative form of payment like a Square. Or it could be a Google Pay or an Apple Pay. I mean, they're being bombarded with all these solutions, and everybody's saying use our stuff, and you don't have to worry about PCI. And what they're essentially saying is you don't have to worry about security. And time again, that's being proven to be wrong.
Yeah, because there's still the security of the actual end station itself, right? I mean, you still have the system. It's just the system's on someone else's computer and not your computer.
Right.
That doesn't absolve you from actually trying to secure your systems. Stuff can still get on there.
Because technically it's your system. It's just somewhere else.
Yeah, it potentially steal your credentials to your cloud-based point-of-sale system and do the exact same thing as if you had it locally, right?
Well, I think the biggest misunderstanding is what vendors sometimes say more explicitly or less explicitly, and what the retail merchants want to hear is if you install X, pick a product, PCI goes away. What they're really saying is your responsibility for the compliance and meeting the requirements largely goes away. We cover that for you, or we alleviate you from having to do a lot of those things. What is not done in most cases is removing the liability or the potential liability if there is a breach. That still squarely falls on the merchant, whoever they are. And that's probably the biggest misunderstanding of all the ads that are out there. Walk RSA, walk Black Hat. You'll see companies saying, we'll make your PCI pain go away. We'll take care of your PCI burden. And my attitude is, if you view security as a burden and as a nuisance, you kind of already lost the battle.
Right.
But that goes back to education and awareness, which I think is the only thing that really starts to make a difference for the small merchants. They gotta know that they gotta get into the security game. Yes, it's going to be at a different level. Yes, they have limited budgets perhaps, but they've got to do something. And I think the industry owes everybody to offer them something that is something that they can use.
Yeah, and the reality is, even when things are going well, most small businesses fail, right? They've got enough against them just in the regular business market. So if they get a database compromise where their user data gets out there, that will sink them. So it's one more obstacle to new businesses that are picking up. So they've got to be aware. They've got to work towards it. But it would be nice to see the security vendors take a little more active role in some of this, to be able to better increase people's awareness, let them know, make tools available to them. I think Square does a really good job with their iPad registers, where like everything is kind of self-contained and managed in a way that's all a walled garden. The customer can't really break it. But even that's not perfect. There's systems like AWS that Amazon does a great job with their systems. They say right on the website, hey, we are PCI compliant. But at the end of the day, yes, they're PCI compliant. But once you start putting your data on there, you're not necessarily PCI compliant anymore. So they don't necessarily come right out and push that on you either. So these big businesses, they could be taking a more active role in that to help support the smaller businesses that are out there. I just don't see that happening.
To your first point, I can tell you I was at a one of these new brewery places that have a bar. They've become popular in our area. So they were brand new. That only opened in the last month or two before I was there, and they were using Square. And I'm sitting at the bar, and the Square device was, behind the bartender on the counter that's sort of on the back end. And he took my credit card to run a tab amongst, as well as, 5 or 6 other people. And he was taking our credit cards, and he was lining them up on the back wall, facing us, facing the customers. And I'm like, can I talk to you a minute? And we had a little bit of a discussion about, I could take a picture of all those cards right now, and especially if it's American Express, I've got everything I need to go out and commit fraud.
Yeah,
because the security code's printed on the front of an Amex card. Mm-hmm. And he's like, oh, that's probably a bad idea. I should probably flip them over. I'm like, well, not so quick, not so fast.
Because now I can take a picture of the back and get the security code and the number that's imprinted in the card.
But they had gone out, and I'm pretty sure it was Square. And they're like, oh, yeah, the guys gave us Square. And they said, we don't have to worry about PCI. And I'm like, yeah. And you could still get popped, and it's a small number, but it's still going to be painful to you as a startup business if even just a few dozen of your patrons are victims of fraud, and it does come back to hurt you, and there are fines involved. And Square wouldn't cover that, but they don't have to worry about reading the standard and reading about basics, kind of security awareness, physical security, protecting the cards, even the physical portion of it. Because if somebody tells you don't have to worry about it, you're going to stop reading. Right?
Right.
That's right.
And Don, you may have some insight into this. I think it was you that mentioned backups and how important they are for the small business. I feel like that's a very consumable problem, right, to have backups for a smaller business. I remember when I did IT for a smaller business, I had tapes, and I used to have to go around and feed tapes in, and that was our backup system. If something needed to be restored, it took a long time compared to today's standards. It took a really long time, and that's if the data was read properly from tape. But there's a lot better solutions out there. Are people just not using them? Do they not realize it? Are they too expensive? What's the deal with backups?
I think people just don't use them. You see things like Apple, right, or Macs, where they have Time Machine. Time Machine's super easy to configure and turn on, and now your system's backing up. But the backup is live. It's hooked up to your computer, so it can get encrypted just like your computer can. But for a small business, the solutions are so much easier today. The Dropbox, Crash Plan, Azure Cloud Backup, any of those solutions that are out there where you install them and they just run in the background. And they're doing encrypted backups that are being sent, encrypted over the network, stored at an offsite location in somebody else's cloud. We didn't have that back in the day. If you wanted it off-site, somebody had to take it home, and that was a whole security risk in and of itself.
Oh, there was what was the Iron Mountain?
Yep,
was the Iron Mountain trucks used to drive around.
Yeah, so when I worked at the healthcare organization, it was kind of hilarious. They used Iron Mountain, and all the tapes went off-site, and then I moved out into the country here in Rhode Island, and between my mom's house and our house, which is less than 2 miles away, is the Iron Mountain facility where all our tapes went. Mm-hmm. So if there was an emergency, guess who was sent to go get the tapes?
Yep.
This guy, because I knew where it was. It was less than a mile from the house, and it was potentially on my way into the office or on the way home.
There you go.
And it's stopping off at that warehouse at the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yes.
Go find your tapes.
Yeah, fortunately, though, they had a system to do that for us.
They do have a system.
But after they found that out, they're like, oh, well, shit, Larry, you're on the authorized list to go pick up tapes in person now. Like, damn it.
I got to tell you, though, I used to visit a lot of those types of facilities, Iron Mountain and others, and had to review a lot of the handling procedures for backup tapes. But that faded away. I haven't done PCI actively in almost 4 years, and probably the last.
And you're a better man for it.
And I am a better man for it. But the last 3 or 4 years, 5 years of doing PCI, so I'm going back to late aughts, 2010ish. I mean, there weren't as well, and I worked mostly with the big merchants, but there weren't a lot of people that were still using backup tapes. There were some, but most people were using online systems.
Mm-hmm.
Virtualized systems.
And those systems are pretty plentiful now for small businesses. So I think that goes back to Jeff's point of education.
Yeah. I think that would be if that's the best protection against something like WannaCry, then that's certainly got to be a highly commoditized, pretty affordable solution.
Well,
you just got to teach people how to do it, use it.
Even broader than that, I think one of the best things a small business can do is invest in a decent cloud backup strategy now, because it's like almost a no-brainer. It's such great service compared to what that just didn't exist before.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that and it's not just protection from evil attackers; it's protection from well-intentioned systems administrators that may mess something up.
Yep.
Because we've all been there.
Well-intentioned employees and customers.
Yes.
Yeah.
What other solutions are some of the more easy wins for small businesses? I mean, Don was talking about endpoint protection. Like, dare we go down that route?
Yes, we do. Yes.
Well, we can go down, but if we're talking point of sale, most of them don't have them installed.
Right. And is that because they're concerned about availability?
Traditionally, it was just a technical concern about pushing signatures out to hundreds, if not thousands, of remote locations, which are sort of remote endpoints on a traditional network. Mm-hmm. Now, as more retailers are pushing their internet connectivity to more cloud-based solutions, it may become more feasible, but traditionally, these are the things that aren't on a point of sale that are supposed to be from a PCI perspective. Regular patching, some sort of endpoint protection, antivirus, anti-malware, the ability to have it scanned on a from an internal perspective on a regular basis with a quarterly clean report, some sort of file integrity monitoring, and usually the logs are not enabled, so they're not capturing logs. So those are the 5 things that were extremely common not being done on point of sale. Now let's have the conversation.
I think there's other technologies that used to be out of the reach of small businesses that are, I think, now in the reach. For example, network intrusion detection, right? So host-based intrusion detection, we've had in one form or another for a long time, and it was affordable. But network intrusion detection, that was always really expensive. But now even the cheapest Cisco ASA has firepower support. So it's got snort and a custom rule set and all that mess built into it. So they're not perfect by any means, but they're easy to deploy, and they're subscription based, so you pay out a certain fee for a period of time, and you at least get that extra level of protection there as the data is moving in and out of your network. That used to be out of reach. Those things are now, I think, more plentifully available. What
about the ability to re-image a system? And I think it was I think his name was Greg. He was the CISO for Advanced Auto Parts. We had him on the show. I want to say he was the one that was kind of promoting, like, basically we take an image of all our point of sale systems. If something bad happens, we just revert to a previous snapshot. I mean, it's almost like having a virtual machine on every system and just reverting to a snapshot. Is that? I don't hear about that technology or get asked questions about that technology.
What was some of the stuff that I used to see that was like deep freeze or something like that?
They used to use it when I was at the university. Geoff, I'm sure you must remember this too, was that they'd have a standard image.
Yeah, it was almost a hardware. It was a hardware lock, actually, if I seem to remember, that was associated with it as well.
Yeah, like in the labs, like public computers, like when you're done using it and you log out, basically everything gets wiped, and every night everything resets to the image. Yep.
You still see a bit of that. Altiris is still out there and some of the other bigger products. The thing is, in the corporate world, in small business world, medium business, whatever, it's a little different than a school. On a school, you want to clean and erase a machine every single day.
Yeah.
In a corporate world, we don't necessarily want to do that. But if something goes wrong with it, you do want to be able to get back to where you were. And I think thanks to a lot of cloud technologies and most of our stuff being web-based, if something goes wrong, screw it. You just format the machine and that's it. We don't necessarily need a frequently updated image to be able to support that. I know here I'll use IT Pro TV as an example. We don't back up workstations here at all. None of our laptops, none of our desktops get backed up. And if something happens, they just get wiped out because all of our data is stored server side or in the cloud. And so there's not really a need to back up those workstations.
Yeah, I noticed it with my Chromebook because I decided I wanted to flip it into developer mode.
Yep.
In order to do that, it does a system reset.
Yep. So you lose all your shit.
Yeah. But it's a Chromebook, and so I log in with my Google account, and all my stuff is still there.
Yeah.
You're basically using Chrome as your OS, essentially. I mean, there isn't a Linux OS underneath it, but all of my stuff is in Chrome. And I protect my Chrome settings and bookmarks and data with a password. Does that, no, I didn't look into it as much as I should have. Does that encrypt your settings, or does it just make you give an additional password to access it?
To access it locally, to my understanding, someone's probably screaming at the radio right now, or their radio listening to this, or their headphones now listening to this, or screaming at their TV. But if you enable sharing of that data through Chrome, through Google, through multiple apps.
Yes.
And here's where it almost got to bite me not too long ago. What was it? We talked about VLC player.
The subtitles?
No, a different one.
Oh.
I'm sorry, not VLC, Handbrake.
Yeah.
Handbrake got their repository popped.
Yes.
Their remote one got popped, but their local didn't. And the remote had some malware included in it. So when you downloaded it for the Mac, it compromised your Mac, even though Macs don't get viruses because they're invincible. If you had, and it grabbed all of your stuff from Chrome, and if you sync Chrome between multiple computers through Google, that stuff from this computer would end up on that other computer that had the vulnerable version of Handbrake and have all of your passwords for all the websites that you access.
Interesting.
And
so
the
password store is...
And the reason I know this is because I built a new machine to do Handbrake at home, and that's all it does. It does Handbrake and DVDs and stuff. And I just built it. And I installed Handbrake the weekend that it got compromised. And I had a 50-50 shot whether I was going to get popped or not. And I didn't know it at the time until after everything. And it was a 50-50 shot, and I was the unlucky 50%. But I installed Chrome as the default browser, and I had not logged in as my Google account.
I gotcha.
So none of that stuff went over.
Right.
But you know what I
did? I put a passphrase. You can put a passphrase on that data. So when you...
It's easily broken.
It is? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I wasn't... I didn't look into the protection. I enabled it, and I'm like, I wonder how much protection this is giving.
So, and I know it's easily broken because I know this because I went to my other computer because just out of good procedure, this machine got popped that had Chrome on it that could have. It's Google, who knows. So I went back to the one, and I'm like, well, shit, I've got this list of stuff. I want a list that I can print out and I can cross off when I've changed the damn passwords. How do I get that? Oh, it's encrypted. Oh, there's a tool in Python that decrypts it for you. Okay, done. Here's my list. Done. Off we go.
Nice.
Yeah, it was a 30-second process.
Yeah, I got
so,
okay, so no
but
protection.
I would still say put the password on there because that was 30 seconds that I had to go through, and someone that is of less caliber and doesn't want to go through that effort won't.
I'm wondering now, I'm going to research it if there's settings, because if you have a G Suite account, you get complete control over every user's Google settings, and you can exercise as little or as much control. And I've spent sometimes over an hour, couple of hours, going through the settings and researching things, and it's not very well. I mean, it is documented, but it's not very well publicized. All the stuff that you can actually do with it.
Yep.
There's a lot of Google searches.
Yeah. Well, you have to know what you need to Google for, and at that point, for the small business person, we're keep this small business focused type deal. You're talking about having someone that you're doing your sysadmin. It's just someone else's computer. Again.
Yeah. That's a good point because for small business,
what Larry was saying,
go ahead, Don.
Anytime you have services that synchronize, across a cloud service like that, you've got a risk. And I'll use Dropbox as the example, and kind of just like Larry said, if you have 20 computers that are using a central Dropbox for Business account, and one of them gets hit with ransomware and encrypts all the files, they're going to sync the encrypted version of those files
Right.
up to the cloud service, and that's going to sync back down to everybody else. So everybody just got encrypted data, even though they're not infected.
Especially with something like that, where the new file gets encrypted, it's an update, so it gets synced to Dropbox, which now needs to be synced to everybody else because it's new.
Cascading effect.
And with Dropbox, when you sign up for them, it's like, I don't know, $100 a year for a terabyte of storage. And there's an option that they don't necessarily show right away that for another $40, you get file versioning. So you can do a rollback, right? But if you didn't pay the $40, then you don't have that available. And it's only $40. It's a no-brainer. I tell people about this all the time. Like, you need to do that. It's only $40. Think of the price of one Bitcoin.
Oh God, especially now.
Oh, and I'm wondering if G Suite has similar options. Again, it's like a whole journey in and of itself.
Yep.
Researching.
Here
see
you
small
are being a
business-
sysadmin.
Well, and I can see small
Paul?
businesses not doing that, right? In doing the due diligence, I can see a good business opportunity for someone to say, hey, we can really help you, not just with the security aspect, but we can help you manage your G Suite because there's so much options, Jeff.
Jeff.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to something that Don said a while ago, just to make sure that I had the proper clarification. We were talking about the point of sale and the lack of a lot of basic protections that PCI requires, and he brought up the idea of network-based intrusion detection, which is fine. There's a twist to PCI that says you can't use what you're doing to meet a PCI, an existing PCI requirement to satisfy another PCI requirement as a compensating control. And intrusion detection is something that's already required. So while that's a good idea to do, it's not going to solve the problem from a compliance perspective anyway of nothing's being done on the point of sale. What has been done, what is much more common, is there's various whitelisting solutions that have been put out there that ostensibly are better than or provide a similar protection to what the things that they're not doing on the point of sale are supposed to protect against. So I just wanted to add that clarification.
Anything else on small business security or lack thereof?
Where can they get good, cheap training?
Yeah, there you go. That's a great segue, Jeff.
And I do have two questions for Don, unrelated, but afterwards. So at the
That's
end,
right.
the
Ready,
end
hit-
of
hit the-
where
hit the
where,
ready,
where
set,
can you
go.
get good, awesome training?
Well, there's a lot of resources that are out there, many that are really great.
But we want the best, Don. We want the best. Where can we get the best?
Well, you've got to make sure that you're getting the training that's right for the audience. So when you're talking about a small business owner, they don't necessarily need a pen testing course, right? So they need general awareness. And there's companies like ours, like IT Pro TV, where we've got training that's built around that for the CEO or somebody of that role that just needs to understand what their responsibility is. And then you need to designate at least one person to be responsible for IT security in your organization, even if they're not officially a CISO or whatever. And they're the ones that need to go much further than that. You've got basics like Security Plus, but then you've got the more advanced things. But more importantly, I think, than training, and I know I'm not supposed to say this stuff because that's my business, but more importantly than training, I think you just need to stay aware, right? You need to be hitting websites like ThreatPost and podcasts like Security Weekly, where you can just kind of keep a finger on the pulse of what's going on out there and just be aware. Too many people are oblivious to what's going on, and then all of a sudden they get blindsided. There's plenty of people out there right now that don't know what ransomware is, and that is reckless. So
They should watch Secure Digital Life.
Yes.
So you had questions for Don.
So Don, I'm a guy that likes to look into the background a little bit. We've done some research on metadata, and I've been looking behind you at some set dressing at the awesome IT Pro TV studios, and I had two questions. Over your left shoulder, there's a photograph next to the little
Qbert?
green man.
Is that Qbert?
It's not Qbert.
Oh.
Yes, there's a
That's
photograph.
whoop.
Whoop,
Oh.
down to your
Oh,
left.
there it is.
To your
Yeah.
left. Yeah, that one.
Ooh.
So that is
Okay, all right. I see the other reference, and
From a distance, it looked like he had an afro.
so there's Quark, and who's the other gentleman sitting next to him?
That's Cardassian.
Yes.
What's his
That's,
name again?
Garrick.
Quark.
It's Quark on the right, and the Cardassian's name is
Garrick.
excellent.
That's right. Totally Deep Space Nine reference.
And and that was
Not to
actually
be
signed by
confused with
Andrew Robinson.
Kardashians.
That's it.
Yep.
Thank you, Jeff.
So seeing that out of context was very difficult for me to pick up who that was. The other question that I've got, so over basically right behind your head, is there anything better than Johnny Walker back there?
Oh yeah, he's got quite. Those are now. See, I've been to Don's office, and that was my first question. I'm like, those, dude. Like, are those full? Well, no, wait,
not
no,
really.
they're empty. Never mind.
Yeah, well, see, that's the good thing. But
Drank them all
no, okay,
in one
okay.
sitting. The legend
Wow.
goes that he drank them all in one
Wow.
sitting and lived to tell.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I
Every one of those
have a
officially
related
emptied by me.
question, and that is over your right shoulder. That rack of things that look like servers, is that real servers or is it fake?
So they were real servers. They are now fake.
Okay.
Well, they are real servers. They're just
They're
not doing anything
decommissioned.
important.
That's right.
That's right. They would be entirely too noisy if I turned them on.
Yeah, excellent.
Yes.
Excellent.
Well, okay, so they're real servers, but not actually executing or running servers. But okay, that's okay.
Yeah. So Don, I'm a Star Wars guy, but I have a very healthy respect for Star Trek as well.
As you should.
My wife is currently
Absolutely.
running through her favorite series of Star Trek,
Which is?
hers Voyager. Go figure, female
Interesting.
captain. She's,
Oh, Gilligan's Island in space.
It is Gilligan's Island in space.
She likes it. I pick my battles. Doesn't matter. Had sex, right?
Well, and you get to 7 of 9 is not hard
I
to look
rest.
at.
My
I have to
case.
admit, Jerry Ryan is not.
I
Jerry Ryan,
rest my case. Now, that also said, and the Borg, some really epic stuff with the Borg as well. My 9-year-old daughter has also very much taken an interest into Star Trek because of my wife's involvement or my wife's love for Voyager. And Voyager came out with, in her college years, so it was something that she sort of was growing up with type of thing. So
There's another one coming out this year.
Oh, really?
there's also another
Yes.
Star Wars movie coming
Star
out
Trek
this year.
Discovery. I'm totally looking for. Okay, I think Jeff's in the same camp as me. I'm completely a Trekkie. I think Don is as well, by the sounds of things. So I'm looking forward to it.
Kind of got me wanting to go back and watch Deep Space Nine again. I
Absolutely.
never fully appreciated
Absolutely.
that. I kind of always
It
thought
was
it
my
a weird
favorite one.
Yep.
But please tell me you've binge watched the original series.
Oh, yeah,
I
I've watched
grew up
it.
watching the original series and wasn't the biggest fan of the Next Generation, but DS9, that was the one that resonated with me.
Did anybody pick up on Enterprise though? Did anyone pick up Star Trek Enterprise?
Yes.
That was a pretty good series too.
I really
it's
enjoyed
just okay.
Enterprise, but it
boy.
was way too short, and I think Scott Bakula. I don't know. I'm sold.
I think it was.
Did you
I
get
think
my
it was.
reference?
Look!
There,
Oh,
very nice.
Uh-huh.
Oh, wow. We have totally dove off the cliff.
We
into
have.
Trek.
Hey, Don, have you answered 5 questions with Security Weekly before?
We did it, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
we did it before. Okay.
Yeah, he did.
They weren't the greatest.
I've
answers,
got
but
a-
they
I've
were
got a-
answers
Well,
nonetheless.
now that you've had chance to think about it,
Yeah. No, we won't do
No.
it again. One and done.
all right.
I wonder
Already.
if Don
she said.
could quickly expound on the difference, the way he was articulating between awareness and training. But that intrigued me.
Oh, now we're back on the real topic now.
Wow.
Yeah, we're back on
Okay,
the real
yeah.
topic. Sorry.
I can touch on that certainly. Training a lot of times is built around a certification. It's built around a test. Like you need to memorize these things, and then go take this test and show that you memorize those things. It doesn't necessarily show that you understand the topic, that you can properly apply the topic, that you even give a crap about the topic, because most of the time we don't, right? Awareness is really just kind of understanding what you need to be doing, understanding what's going on around you, like situational awareness. What exactly is the flow of your data across the network and what risks you're exposed to? When we talk about defense in depth, what is my depth? Where are the points where I could be implementing security? Not that I necessarily need to, but where could I if I wanted to? That's all stuff that's not necessarily in a textbook because it's different for every organization. So you understand your data as a business owner better than anybody outside is going to. So how we can apply those security topics to your own business, that's what I consider awareness. And a lot of people miss out on that. They don't get that piece. And yeah, they've memorized the the ISO model or the OSI model. See, I screw up the acronym. The OSI model or the 20 different encryption algorithms. Great. Well, you're only going to use one of them, so you know 20 of them. Yeah, are you properly applying it? Are you applying it to the data in the right places? Is it all being maintained properly? That's all what comes in addition to that. So it is different, in my opinion. I'm probably nitpicking words on that one, but awareness versus training, it's really two different things.
I had one, actually, last question for you, Don. I think when we were speaking last, you said something about having training for G Suite. What do you have training for that? And if so, where is it? Who's it targeted at?
So I made it myself. Well, I made it myself with my team here. I'll take full credit for that. But yeah, we have G Suite training. It's targeted towards a system administrator, and it could be a single person working for a company with 5 employees, up to a team managing a much larger organization. That content scales really well. Google made their product where it scales really well like that.
Gotcha. How technical does it get? Is it super technical or like not super technical?
Everything is done via the web interface, so we never have to drop to like a shell or write a script or anything. I think the closest we do is a CSV to import a bunch of users into G Suite. Yeah. Okay. So, but everything else, it explores all the different functions that are kind of found, and it's like you said, Paul. There are a ton of options in there, and some of it's really tricky. Yeah,
and some of it's really neat. I think if you spend the time with it, I think it can really help improve the security. So yeah, I'm definitely Sam. If you're listening, I'm going to send you through that. I'm going to send you. Well, that I've enabled to go live at the end of summer for our domain because I started using YubiKeys, and I find like it's like potato chips. Like once you get one, you're like, I really need another one because you can basically enable multiple YubiKeys to be your second factor for all of your things, so that I can have one in my pocket, right? And I can have one on my keychain, and I can have one on my bag, and then I just got to know if I lose one, I go in and I deactivate that in my account. So it's a little bit of management.
You just need to get a YubiKey for every computer you use, and you can just leave it right there by the computer. That way it's there when you need it.
You could do that, but that's actually not a bad approach. The problem is the management, though, right? Is if you lose a computer, someone steals it, or you lose that YubiKey, you got to know to go in and disable that token. And if you get too many, you can lose track very easily. I
have my one YubiKey, which is on my keychain with my car keys, because I never go anywhere without that. So I've always got that key with me. And then after that, it's my recovery key that I have to jump over to if I lose that one. So I just stick with one key.
That's what I have. I'm thinking about adding a third into the mix because inevitably, like, I'll be in my basement office working and my keys are like all the way upstairs, or I'm here in the studio doing a show and I don't have my keys on me and I'm like, I can't log in because I don't have my keys on me. That's good.
Well, what I did for that, Paul, is I also set up the Google Authenticator as well. And so I've got that's like the YubiKey and the Google Authenticator, so I can go between them if I don't have one.
Right. Now, can you turn off the SMS in favor of Authenticator and a YubiKey?
I don't have SMS turned on. I'm talking about the actual Google Authenticator app.
Yeah, the app, right. Because mine backs up right now to SMS, which I don't like at all.
Yeah, I don't use that one.
Cool. All right, with that, we're going to take a short break, come back, and Don, are you going to stay with us for the rest of the show, or do you have to go?
I'm good either way.
Okay. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. Finding Node.js next. Right. The average time between being hacked and realizing you've been hacked is 1 year. Can you afford to let an intruder roam your network for that long? Can your company weather the fallout when this comes to light? Black Hills Information Security can find the bad guys in your network and train you to do it yourself. Email consulting@blackhillsinfosec.com to find out how a hunt teaming engagement can help you find a persistent threat in your network. Signal Sciences is the industry's first web protection platform that works in any cloud, any container, any platform as a service, and any modern application architecture. The Signal Sciences web protection platform can be deployed in next-generation WAF, RASP, or reverse proxy modes, giving customers ultimate flexibility and coverage. Protect your web applications with Signal Sciences web protection platform. Signal Sciences, securing code and connecting teams. For more information, check them out at signalsciences.com/ESW. Has your network been breached? Cybereason can help you answer this question. Cybereason products hunt for threats within your network and eliminate them in real time. To Cybereason, real time means within seconds. Founded by former military hackers who don't play by the rules, they've built this experience into their platform. Harness ingenuity and imagination, not just code, to defeat attackers. Cybereason, disrupt the adversary and let the hunt begin. Welcome back, everyone, to Paul's Security Weekly. Make sure you come check out Wild West Hacking Fest. It's put on by Red Team Specialists for anybody and everybody interested in information security. Join us on October 27th and 28th for hands-on hardware hacking talks by famous infosecers like Dave Kennedy, Deviant Egypt, Chris Nickerson, Chris Gates, Mike Poore, and Sub T, and more.
Paul Asadorian, Larry Pesci, Joff Thayer.
Check us out at wildwesthackinfest.com, HACKIN Fest.
And for the record, the Buck and Bronco rider logo is awesome.
With John Strand's face photoshopped.
I was going to say, look at the face.
Yes.
It's
that there is. I won't give it away, but there's some more interesting logo stuff going on. So you need to show up. It's going to be fun.
Hopefully, it doesn't involve
huge.
It's going to be huge and bigly.
John on a horse.
bad.
Moses Hernandez is here with us. Moses is a consulting systems engineer at Cisco and an instructor for the penetration testing courses at SAN. Moses, welcome to the show.
Hey, Paul. How's it going? Hey, Larry.
It's going
All right.
Hey, so you're going to talk about finding Node.js. Like, I did a Google search, and I found it. In it. Is that end of segment? No.
It's at node.js.com. What?
Yeah. Well, so it turns out that I was running we're talking about WordPress and Slack and all these different applications, and in actually me running WordPress, the latest WordPress, I was running a vulnerability scanner on my box one day, and I realized I'm running Node.js all over the place. And so I've been doing this kind of awareness talk for everybody that attends SANS where I'm training, really focusing on Node.js on the desktop. And so I took that talk, I cut it up into pieces, and I kind of red teamed it a little bit. So it's really about awareness of the fact that the Node.js that's running on the server is running desktop side. And not just that, there's old remnants of Node.js running, and there's vulnerabilities around it. And there's actually the demo that I'll show you is bypassing sandbox blocking, or whether it's Microsoft software restriction policy or app blocker, using the Node.js that's installed right on your box.
No, so wait, I thought Node.js was basically server-side JavaScript.
Yes, it is. But the server is running on your box, and we'll kind of talk about how that kind of works.
Wait, so the server's running on
the box.
Yeah, it's running on my.
So let me kind of fast forward this to you. So
okay, if you want to just make that, can you make that full screen? Can you go to presentation
absolutely.
mode? Yeah.
Oh yeah, Moses can make it full screen.
Hold on, I'll make it full screen.
There you go.
All right, so
there we go. All right.
So by the way, my words. All right, so we'll move on. This was my best impersonation of a Kendrick Lamar album, so I thought I'd throw that out there. But I thought, yeah, there you go. So this is the actual talk, right? Now, I was having lunch with some of the other authors of 642, because I actually authored 2 of the days of the advanced web app pen testing course. And I told them that Node.js was basically like if Java on the desktop and PHP had a love child. That's Node.js today.
Gotcha. That's very, very, very well done. Well done. I like it.
Yeah. So that's the premise. So this is the story time, right? This is me looking and seeing a Node.dll running on my box, running an
Wait,
old version
so
of
when you say your box, you mean the client with the web browser?
Yeah, my
Web
Windows
server.
computer. My Windows computer has a file on it running the Node.dll, okay? That is actually Node.js server-side JavaScript that used to be called Node.exe, running an old version, from a couple months ago. Yeah, yes, it's very sad. So let me explain what this is. This is server-side JavaScript, right? We talk about it, and a lot of hipster web applications run it. But really, it's a framework that usually is built on something called Electron. Okay, so if you're running any one of these kind of client desktop applications, what the GitHub folks decided to do was say, hey, you know what? We could take Node.js, we could package it with Chrome. We can actually deliver a cross-platform experience across all the desktops by having JavaScript server-side being rendered right on your own box.
You mean to tell me?
So wait,
wait. So
go
you mean to
ahead.
tell me when I run the Slack app on my Mac, I'm running Chrome and Node locally?
You're running Node.js for sure. Chrome doesn't have to be there, but you're running Node.js for sure.
So we made a
interesting.
framework for running JavaScript on the server
side, but now
and
we're
then
going to
we run
move it to
on
the client.
That's correct. And they're basically
client
standing up
becomes
a
a server.
web server. Yeah.
Right.
So so
Good.
the client.
So yeah, I
client
wonder
app-
where this is going.
yeah. So there's already been bugs. Travis Ormandy, you gotta love when he finds a bug.
Or
he
not.
Yeah.
He disclosed a couple of bugs on the Trend Micro framework a few months ago, where if you're running Trend Micro desktop antivirus and you were running their password manager, which came by default, it stood up it wasn't even Electron. It was just straight up Node.js listening on a local socket to provide the password manager. And of course,
So weird.
it actually provided command execution. So all you had to do was send JavaScript, like an actual cross-site scripting that told it to launch the local host. And well, he had calc, but you can imagine it could have been anything. So this is an actual problem. This is an actual big problem. I'll show you how you can find it and abuse it. But this is fun. This is a lot of fun. So Electron is cross-platform desktop apps with JavaScript, HTML, CSS, the whole thing. Right? Nothing can go wrong here. Now, this is what started my part of the talk. So I talk about abusing Node.js in many ways. But for this tech segment, I'm focusing in on this one blog posting. So if anybody's not read this, this came out April 20th. And basically, if you're running an NVIDIA driver, now, Larry, Paul, are any of you guys running NVIDIA drivers potentially on a Windows machine?
I don't personally run Windows except in a VM, but on some of our systems here in the studio, they do have NVIDIA drivers.
Yeah. So if you're running the GeForce Experience, okay, that's the NVIDIA updater, it runs Node.js. And in this blog post, they show you very eloquently how to take Node.js, and this is part of their blog post, right? They say, hey, here's your Node.js. Here's a whole different version than the one I showed you. It's a newer version. And it's the NVIDIA webhelper.exe, but the original file name is node.exe, sadly enough. And here is a command that you can run that basically brings in the child process, which basically is like Python's popen, forks out calc, and then passes it through the NVIDIA process in interactive mode, and it bypasses app locker, right? So I was curious. I was like, yeah, I'm running different applications. I'm running Atom. Can I show you that? So anybody that's ever taken a class with me knows that I run Emacs as my desktop. I know.
I liked you.
Get him off the show right
I
now.
liked you right up until this point, Moses.
I know.
All right. The only saving grace is, please, Moses, please tell me that you do not run Emacs as your default shell under Linux.
Yes, but I've changed. I've changed.
He's maturing.
I'm actually now running Atom, running a shell Node.js process. All right. So the Atom text editor has been my replacement for Emacs because I'm a neckbeard hipster and this is what we do. So this is Atom, right? Now it does run cross-platform. So let me show you kind of my current software restriction policy. So if you try to run MS Paint, from here, you see I really can't. It's blocked. Even if you run it here, you just can't. It's just not available, right? So if you're going to be doing any of this kind of work, you're going to want to see if somebody's actually got Node.js installed. We'll talk about how you find the DLLs and the appropriate things out there. But for easy bake oven purposes, let me just show you the exact command that you can run to kind of bypass this.
If you're showing a command, you got to make it bigger, Moses.
Oh yeah, we got it. That's right. I forgot. My Mac is like one of those crazy ones. This is Windows.
Yeah, it's definitely crazy because you use Emacs.
Windows guys, give me a second here. This is all crazy. How do I make Windows?
We seem to have this. We had this problem last week.
You're in. Yeah.
How do I make Windows cooperate? Oh, never.
Here we go.
Control plus. Control.
There it is.
There you go.
It is.
Oh, look at that.
Control Shift plus. Oh, that's Linux. Never mind.
Anyway, so in my particular system, one of the things we'll talk about is where some of these applications are installed. And so lucky, Atom, to make it easier for everybody, it's installed right on the user's profile. And so is Slack, by the way, Larry, just so that, of course, you don't want any kind of restrictions. You want users to install stuff. So here's Atom. Hold on. Atom.
Because you need a text editor to get to your text editor.
Yeah, of course. And this is how we find the application.
This is how an Emacs user starts Atom.
Yeah.
You are going to get endless rations of crap from me on this.
That's fine. I actually want to let everybody know that I do not mind my operating system is a text editor and vice versa. So we're good with that. So here's how you would start it, and here's MS Paint running, right? So what we did was we started Emacs. We started Node.js because the Node executable is delivered with Atom. We started Node in interactive mode, just like you would start Python in an interactive shell. And all we did was we piped in required child process and execute MS Paint silently in the background.
Oh, dear God.
Oh, my God.
And that's it. And that bypasses things.
So because I don't use a real editor like VI, I've installed Atom, and because I installed Atom, it's bundled with Node.js, which should be run on the server, not the client. I can it's vulnerable to command injection, essentially.
It's not command injection, but it's definitely bypassing software restrictions, right?
Gotcha.
It's not respecting. Now you can run a newer version of Node.js, okay, that will respect software restrictions.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can run it, right? But the problem is, and this is the other part I wanted to kind of talk about, as you're going through your engagements and you realize, okay, well, they're running server-side JavaScript in order to, it's really not replacing the server. It's really not doing that. What it's doing is it's just making it easier for you to program a front end. Think about it. Everybody's front end is JavaScript today, right? So all they're doing is replacing the network connectivity with it being on your local box. That's really all they're doing with this, right? So they're making it easier for developers to develop stuff. You can see how the WordPress guys said, hey, PHP, it's hard to build an editor. Let's just do it in Node.js. It's so much simpler. And yes, I know, it's so sad. Anyway.
Wait, I'm sorry. Go back, Moses. How does this intersect with WordPress again?
Oh yeah. So so WordPress.com has a desktop app.
Oh,
right?
Okay.
Yeah. So WordPress.com has a desktop app that they called Project Calypso. Mm-hmm. So I know you guys I heard the first segment. I know you guys ran WordPress. You're familiar with the original WordPress desktop app. They replaced all of that with this new version called Calypso, which is getting away from all that cruddy, horrible PHP stuff that they had to deal with. And now they got this desktop client. But unfortunately, the sad part is the desktop client is built in Node.js, which is
Oh, okay. I got you.
it's so bad.
I'm with you now.
Bad, yeah. Yeah, it's so sad for them to have gotten to this point. So I know Larry's on a red team. So Larry, I mean, this is how I would approach it.
Mm-hmm.
You've got app locker, some kind of software restriction policy. Can you do a bypass, right? So the first thing you're going to want to wonder is, we saw the Node.js, simplest way to do the Node.js, as long as you knew where the Node exe is, if it was there, that would be one easy way of doing it, right? The issue is, how do I find some of these things? So you can actually look for a couple of artifacts besides Node.exe that will help you identify that an application was written with some kind of a Node.js framework. One is, a lot of times, Node.js frameworks will have a directory called node_modules, where all the different node modules and node packages will live. So, for example, on my Mac, I use this command on the right here to look for all the node modules directories. And then what I did was I sorted it out by the actual name of the application, because you'll find files in there. And then so, in my box, it would look like just 2 files, if you will. Or you could look for the existence of common patterns, right? So on Windows, you could look for Node.dll or Node.exe. You might find that, or you can look for node modules as well, because that would exist in Windows. It would exist across platform. Once you found it, what you would probably want to do is some type of way of determining what version you're running to see if it's a vulnerable version. Looks like anything 6 and below is vulnerable to this, at least at the moment. So here's an example of me on my box finding the WordPress.com Node.dll file, passing it some PowerShell, saying, hey, I want you to give me the property of that executable, which will show me the file version that's there. So some quick and easy ways of kind of determining where something is, so that you can actually get privilege or bypassing execution, if you will.
Yeah. No, so Moses, on the converse, thinking about this is that I know a lot of the really cool shit you do on Windows nowadays is all PowerShell based. And we're finding that many folks are trying to restrict the use of PowerShell on systems. So conceivably, if Node was there, you could, and a quote vulnerable version of Node packaged with an app, you could use Node interactively to execute PowerShell to bypass software restriction policies.
Absolutely.
Love your
Absolutely.
thinking, Larry. Love your thinking.
Yeah.
Bravo.
So
that
you
was
said,
epic.
so Larry, I know you're on a red team, and I'm like, yeah. You were saying that, I am texting the guys saying, "Fuck, you guys need to watch the show right now." I can confirm. Read the text. Fuck,
Awesome.
fuck, y'all need to watch this show with Moses right now.
Hold on. So here's some cool stuff that I think you also should think about.
Okay.
2 things that I'm currently working on that I'm not sure it's possible, but it's likely. Okay. One is Node.dll could be called from run.dll32 somehow to give you the interactive shell. So I'm working on a way to figure that part out. It's a little wonky because it's technically Node.exe, but it's packaged as a DLL. So it doesn't natively run without run.dll32, and so it's not perfect yet. But Node.dll could also run JS files. And so it's kind of like DLL hijacking, but it's like I could always like hot patch the JS files to run on my own. And, anything you can conceive of in JS, right, where it's packed or whatever, you could technically do. So you could use Node.exe in place of PowerShell, or in place of PowerShell.exe as a stager, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Just an alternative way of doing it. Just kind of ran out of runway to play around with this. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of an interesting way of abusing web services on your local host.
That's awesome. Moses, thank you
the mushroom cloud just literally erupted over my head.
That was awesome, dude. Fantastic technical segment. Where can people find more information about this project? Do you have like a website or?
Yeah, well, I do. I blog on my own site. I blog on renegade.blog, or you can find me on Twitter, or I'll be teaching somewhere and always putting something in a class. So
So
Awesome.
to
absolutely.
recap, the fix is update to the latest version of Node.
Correct.
If it's available.
Right.
If it's
Yeah, it depends on
available,
what they packaged with your application.
that's correct.
Right,
So
because if you do an install of Node locally, it won't necessarily patch all of the reference Node versions with your applications.
WordPress clients and
by the way,
Slack.
Larry,
Well,
Yeah.
here's
let's not try to fix the problem or anything.
here's the other
So-
problem, Larry. I kind of skipped this, but I think you're going to find this. Remember, I mentioned Java on the desktop. What was the issue with Java on the desktop way back
It
when?
was slow.
Way back when, yeah, it was slow.
Oh, well, yeah.
Wait,
well,
even
that's
today
true.
it's slow?
That's true. But what was the issue with versioning?
You had to have like a billion versions to actually make many
Any application work?
many applications to run. So
Yeah,
they were all
so-
independent.
Yeah, so it turns out that even within the same application like Atom, you can have a littering of versions on the disk.
Oh, interesting.
Oh, yeah.
So the solution there is to use VI.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Sure. I'm going to go back to Emacs now.
Yeah, what you need to do is you need to actually publish a version of VI with Node.
Yeah.
This reminds me a lot. I love what you're doing, Moses. It reminds me a lot of the world of Java deserialization vulnerabilities, which is the same kind of issue where it's very, very difficult to patch because there's like different versions like scattered everywhere of the code, and you just can't get at the problem. So bravo, man. That's really cool.
Yeah, I do have a Sans blog post going up in a few weeks here that talks about another issue in Node.js around buffer. So that should be fun too.
Awesome. Well,
Nice.
Moses, thank you very much for
You're
appearing
welcome.
on Paul Security Weekly. With that,
Yeah.
we are going to take a short break, come back, talk about security news for this week. IT Pro TV, an easy, entertaining approach to online IT training. Access over 2,000 hours of up-to-date, high-quality video content live and on demand for a free 7-day trial and 30% off the lifetime of your account. Visit itpro.tv/securityweekly and use the code SW30. NetSparker, the developers of desktop and cloud-based web application security scanners that enable you to automatically identify vulnerabilities in your web applications and web services. NetSparker scanners employ a unique and dead-accurate vulnerability scanning engine that automatically verifies vulnerabilities with their proof of concept. For more information, visit them on the web at netsparker.com or email at contact@netsparker.com. Logarithm's Netmon Freemium delivers real-time network visibility to quickly identify emerging threats in your IT environment. Netmon Freemium is a free commercial-grade network forensics and traffic analytics solution. You can use Netmon Freemium's powerful capabilities to search against all observed network traffic, identify abnormal traffic patterns and application usage, and quickly analyze full packet captures. Take the first step towards real-time network visibility. Visit logarithm.com/freemium to learn more and download it today. Endgame automates the hunt for both known and never-before-seen adversaries in enterprise networks. Built on unique knowledge on the adversary's tools, techniques, and tactics, Endgame's centrally managed agent prevents, detects, and responds to advanced adversaries in the earliest stages of the kill chain without prior knowledge. Endgame, automate the hunt. Welcome back, everyone, to Paul's Security Weekly. This is our security news for this week. I'm here to tell you not just about AnyCon. Actually, I am here to tell you about AnyCon, of course, the first hacker conference of its kind in Albany, New York. The event will take place June 16th, 17th, in the Albany Convention Center. Capture the Flag competition, hardware hacking village, ping pong tournament, several tracks available, family-friendly environment. Dave Kennedy will be delivering the keynote. Security Weekly's own Doug White will be there giving out Security Weekly t-shirts, hacker movie-themed glassware. You can go to anycon.info/tickets, use the discount code Paul, and get 25% off.
And Jeff Mann will be speaking.
Jeff Mann will be speaking at AnyCon as well. Doug and team, I think Sam and one of the production crew, Mark, Riley, or Tyler, one of the three will be there. I'm not sure which. Sam knows. But also, they will have a small selection of challenge coins to give to very special people. We talked about the Security Weekly challenge coin, I think, last week or the week before. Also, I did want to also mention that in updating our websites, visit our websites. We've adjusted a lot of the content. Please go there, check it out. You can subscribe to all of our shows on the network, which now includes Enterprise Security Weekly, Startup Security Weekly, Tradecraft Security Weekly, Secure Digital Life, this show. Am I forgetting any? Did I forget one?
Stogie Geeks.
Stogie Geeks.
Hack Naked News.
Tradecraft. Hack Naked News. That's the one I was missing. Hack Naked News. There's an entire network of shows. You can subscribe to them individually.
Yep. So
many of the shows are in the main.
For me, one I didn't know about, which is crazy. Tradecraft Security Weekly.
Yeah, I didn't really know about it either until Bo was like, "Hey, I want to start doing stuff," and I'm like, "All right." He's like, "I want to call it Tradecraft Security Weekly." I'm like, "All right, let's do it."
So what's it about?
So it's basically tech segments from Bo, mini tech segments on how to do
Just
stuff.
from Bo. Does he have guests come on?
No, it's just him talking about like straight up technical segments.
I will say, knowing our model, how that's gone, he's going to run out of tech segments. So.
We'll see how Bo does.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful
too. We were and we did really well for a long time.
Yes, but it is hard to keep up a regular stamina, as it were.
Yes, they make a pill for that, right, Jeff?
That's right. They make
Right.
Because just the old curmudgeon on the
4 hours, you have to contact your doctor.
That's right.
Yeah, just the curmudgeon on the show now.
John has also pledged to do like an on the road, like just John random security thoughts, knowledge, news kind of show as well.
Interesting.
And a lot of these will start out as like YouTube only kind of things that you can get on our YouTube channel. And we're adding a technical segment to Enterprise Security Weekly.
Nice.
I don't want to call it Enterprise Defender. That's kind of how I'm referencing it now. Obviously, there's a SANS class of Enterprise Defender. But it'll focus on...
Enterprise Blue Team.
Yeah, Enterprise Blue Team. Exactly.
You've got to... We love Bo, right? He's dedicated to making some content to improve tradecraft. And that's cool, right? I mean, I think that'll flourish for a period of time. And and like you said, there is sort of a limit.
Who's that
you run
talking? I
out.
don't recognize him.
What? What are you talking about?
Why do you have sunglasses?
Yeah, he's got his
on?
Ray Charles glasses on.
Well, I decided that for security news that it was time to go incognito this evening, right? Because, security news is, well, not so fun sometimes.
What?
And
What?
Get out.
We're all
Get out.
passionate.
You're going to start using Emacs next. Get out.
oh no, I'm not going to use Emacs. I'm just having problems seeing. No, no, it's the patriotic Russian hacker story that's bothering.
Oh, gotcha.
But,
So let's talk about the patriotic Russian hackers.
Yeah, let's do it.
you want to talk about the patriotic Russian hackers?
I do.
Hackers. Well, do you want me to talk about
I
it?
do.
Well,
I want you to talk about it.
Okay. Well, apparently Vladimir Putin was interviewed in press today and made several comments in St. Petersburg about how his government is not involved in hacking per se, and I paraphrase, but apparently there's patriotic Russian hackers that just might be highly motivated to engage in hacking activities against other, nations. But it's not his government. So that's the gist of the story.
Well, if that's not the biggest excuse for nation state hacking, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
It sounds like complete horseshit to me. I mean, that was my read.
It's a lot of hand waving and Jedi mind tricks. It's patriotic Russian hackers.
Yeah. They're independent.
To quote, of course, it's translated, if they are patriotically minded, they start making their contributions, which are right from their point of view, to the fight against those who say bad things about Russia. So, okay. There it is.
So it's open season.
Yeah. So that was the patriotic hacking story. And on a side note, Megyn Kelly, formerly of Fox News, I think was over to NBC and took up the mantle for that particular interview, or, a number of interviews, I believe.
Yeah, it was her debut.
Yeah.
First thing she gets to do on the new network is go talk to Putin.
Interesting.
So I guess congratulations.
Yeah, no, I saw that on the news. I saw that on the news this morning that she's like, yeah, they've agreed to let me speak to Putin for an hour. I'm like, oh,
It's interesting.
yeah. So,
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's really all there is to say about the patriotism
Yeah, I mean, it's
of Russian hackers. But
it's kind of, we were talking earlier about paying attention to headlines versus like what's actually going on. And I think likely 100% of what the headlines are reporting on cyber attacks and the U.S. and Russia is really just that. It's just headlines.
yep. Now that said, there's also some potential things that we need to be aware of with all of those. And I saw a thread on the Sans mailing list that, like, hey, we have a knock and we put all this stuff on the knock TVs and we want some news and we want some headlines, but we want something that's not all of this political crap. And it was difficult from my opinion, it was difficult. And I think even still, I think we need to be mindful of the political crap that gets out there, because the political crap has some influence of how people behave, regardless of whether or not there's some polarizing thing to that politically. But it changes the way people think, and it affects the way other nations and other hacking groups think. And we need to be conscious of those, quote, crap or fake news, whichever you want to call it, headlines. And and have some
in the old
understanding of
days,
those.
we used to call it propaganda.
Yeah, exactly. And folks react to propaganda, including hacking groups. So I think we need to be cognizant of all of those.
exactly.
Anyone want to speculate who the shadow brokers are?
Well, that's an interesting one. So that's the second story. Well, maybe the third story in my list. That the shadow brokers have opened up a subscription service.
They have
now, where you can buy your 0 days for the small price of $21,000, I believe it was.
And they're switching to some new currency. What was the currency?
Yeah, Ethereum, Zcash, and it might have been Zcash.
Zcash, yes.
Interesting. That's all I can say. I don't want to speculate too much, but it would seem that to me, and my gut instinct is that these people might not be U.S. based, but I could be wrong.
Yeah. Well, the thing with the subscription service is I mean, for an individual, a lot of money. For a nation state, not a lot of money. So clearly their market is, nation states, probably masquerading as an individual. But the interesting part is, like, you don't know what you're buying. Like, basically, you subscribe, and when they come out with a bunch of exploits, like, that's what you get. Like, you don't really know what you're getting.
Yeah, that's right.
It's kind of like those...
Did you see the crowdfunding push they were doing, where they were trying to get a bunch of people to chip in, like a Kickstarter or something like that?
And they pulled it.
And I guess that all collapsed.
Yeah, it pulled it. So the big one for that, Don, was really interesting.
So people said, let's subscribe, but let's crowdfund.
Yeah, there was a group that out there that said, hey, let's crowdfund a subscription. And it's very clear, like, I don't even need to call my lawyer to know that receiving stolen property, let alone contributing to pay for stolen property, is illegal. Yeah. So they pulled
the
that.
idea of a neck-bearded hipster.
Yeah. So it was kind of interesting that in one of the articles I read, this was on Ars Technica, that there was an individual that was saying that it presented an ethical dilemma for them as a security firm, because it was attractive to and I paraphrase, but seemingly attractive to go after this kind of stuff because, well, having 0 days in hand is certainly a competitive advantage.
Sure.
It's my supposition.
Yeah, but, like, how long would those be 0 days for?
Yeah, exactly. How long are they going to last?
Until that crowdfunded group dropped them, right?
Yeah, or anyone. You don't even. All you have to do is tell the vendor, and then it's any X amount of time before the vendor, depending on who the vendor is and how motivated they are to fix it. Conceivably, they're only going to be 0 days for so long.
Yep, agreed.
I'm sort of thinking that some sort of prosecution is not too far behind this, but I guess we'll see what happens.
I have to imagine that intelligence agencies are feverishly looking for who the shadow brokers are.
So
unless it is an intelligence agency
themselves. So speaking of shadow
could
brokers,
be some motivated Russians.
Could be.
Yeah.
Could be any nation's intelligence agency.
So speaking of shadow brokers, Paul, I'm sure you saw, and I probably didn't send it to the right people because I'm an idiot, but I sent the request in to talk about the Vault 7 dump.
Yep.
And there was some Swift stuff there that we've been talking a lot about the Vault 7 dump and all of the 0 days that came out of that. But the Swift portion has been largely overlooked because I don't think a lot of people understand what that really means.
Correct.
And I know a guy that really understands what that Swift stuff means and has done lots of analysis of the dump from all of the Swift stuff and has some very interesting theories about what that could potentially mean. One, what the hell is the Swift stuff all about? And two,
what
did it do?
It's an easy, if you have access to that, an easy way to get money, conceivably.
Right, but what did it do and what was the intent? Potentially, what did it do and what was the intent? And what are some of the things that we can glean from some of that Swift data? And he's got some really, really interesting theories about that.
Do we get to know what those are?
Or? Oh, yeah, he'll tell you.
Oh
yeah.
Like on the show?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Like, this is kind of timely and interesting, and one of those things that Swift, that not a lot of people have been talking about, the Swift portion. They've all, as security professionals, we've been talking about what that means from a 0 day perspective, but what did the Swift thing really mean from a larger, potentially political perspective and from a technology perspective for Swift?
Yeah,
potentially much more impactful, I think.
Well, in the reason, one of the larger reasons I think is for that is because once that transfer happens on the Swift network, it's done. It's not like a credit card where there's reimbursements that happen. Like
Swift is done.
it's done.
Yeah,
It's
but
done.
even
That's it. Money's gone.
But even worse, think about the Swift data and what is contained in that Swift data, and that's all I'm going to say because I don't want to.
I
Don't
see. You
I
can do
don't want
data
to.
analysis
I
on it.
don't
Don't wanna steal the
well,
thunder.
Yeah, I don't want to steal the thunder of the person that's been doing the analysis of this stuff, and he's got some really interesting thoughts about some of this stuff. So we'll leave it at that.
So Bruce and I wrote an article about who the. I mean, it's interesting. He mentioned Swift in here as well, Larry, as whose they could be. Basically, says it leaves a nation state.
Mm-hmm.
North Korea is suspected of being behind WannaCry. But
Who did he specify nation state on Swift?
on Swift?
Did he specify which nation state, or did he just say nation state?
The Swift documents are records of an NSA operation, and the other posted files demonstrate that NSA is hoarding vulnerabilities for attack rather than helping them fix and improve all of our security.
Interesting.
That's very interesting.
Uh-huh. Prove it.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing is proof in this the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
Prove it.
The ICS SCADA systems for penetration testers, a typical engagement. I thought this was interesting because it reads more like an audit than a hands-on penetration test.
Well,
and there's good reason for that.
Oh, yeah. Good.
Yeah.
I'm glad you said there's a good reason for that.
So early on in my pen testing days, I was approached by a company that said, we've got this, it was like, a company through another company, and they were like, we got this company, it's a power plant, and good mutual friends of ours thought I was crazy for saying no, but I was like, no, I'm not doing this. They're like, we want you to pen test a power plant. And I'm like, so there's no like dev environment or anything? They're like, no, this is
the live shit.
Basically a Linux system connected to like live stuff, and we want you to pen test it. And I was like, nope. And they're like, what? I'm like, no, I'm not. I knew that the potential for bad things was really bad, that I could be responsible for a mass scale power outage. I knew that I didn't have the legal backing to be in that particular situation, given the way the deal was structured, that I would likely be the scapegoat. And nor did I have knowledge at that time on how to test a power plant without causing bad things to happen.
That said, I know you and I have tested a power plant.
Yes.
But it was the business portion.
Correct. It wasn't
not
connected.
interacting with the SCADA quote portion.
They were very clear that this was connected to a live power plant. I was like, nope.
I've tested stuff that's actually connected to live controlling entities.
Same here.
And without naming any names, the reports that it's an abysmal situation are absolutely true. These are very much unpatched early systems that are locked in, and we've said this before on the show. They're locked into certain releases because of what the vendors have laid down on them or whatever reasons, and the situation is frighteningly scary. There's no other way to...
Well, yeah, and don't forget, this test I was approached on was probably, it was over 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So I think the level of both the sensitivity of the systems, which might remain the same in the past 10 plus years.
I was going to say, nothing's probably changed.
But the tools, the tools that we have today, I think, are much better, and the tuning of those tools is much better than they were over 10 years ago. Because I knew, walking into an enterprise network or even a smaller network, if I were to run Nmap, for example, I would crash shit all day long.
Yep.
Now, you still do run into that. I think it's less, and Larry, correct me if I'm wrong, like it's less frequent.
Less frequent, yeah. Especially that we've gained some intelligence.
Right.
So, and now, Paul, not to take away from, I know where you're going with this, I think, but Joff, tell me if you can, when you've talked about pen testing those systems, you talked about this abysmal state of what the generator or wherever was handed, and that they're locked into this. But tell me about the state of some of their compensating controls around some of that type of stuff. Yeah,
so very good point. The compensating control, the number one named compensating control in the example I can think of, is that the network was air gapped. Yeah. So subsequently, during my test on site, in this one example, it was determined that the air gap was one employee unplugging an Ethernet cable after hours so that the wireless network could not talk to the SCADA network. That was the air gap.
Because air gap is never air
So in
gaps.
other words, the compensating controls were nil.
Yeah, the compensating controls were nil, and we're talking about Windows XP as industrial controllers pre-SP1.
Okay.
That's interesting because we have a story about XP, and I don't necessarily agree with this headline. It says it's too unstable to spread WannaCry. Now, when you dig into it, now you laugh, and I laugh at the headline. But when
I
you
might disagree, but all right.
dig into it, it was really, when you read it, as it was reported originally by not the Register, some other news site, is what's quoted in here. It basically says that it wasn't the exploit that was crashing it. It was the payload, double pulsar, that was crashing it.
Oh, God.
And while that's funny in and of itself, you can probably tune the payload so that it does not crash Windows XP. However, the exploit could potentially remain pretty I can see that happening. I'm not saying that's exactly the case. I mean, I would have to test it myself to verify that. If anyone has, please write into the show.
Now that said, the
exploit and payload are two different things.
Oh, yeah,
obviously,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
Metasploit taught us that.
Well, yeah,
and my argument would be, what would be the motivation in tuning the payload to actually affect Windows XP given the market share?
Oh, yeah. Well,
now, given the market share, you have to think about this carefully. Where is XP being used, and what is the value of those systems?
Targets.
Those are great targets because if they're running XP, they're probably in something that's very valuable.
I think we just said
I see a SCADA. Yeah.
Industrial control systems.
Yeah.
Right?
Versus what's the market share? Do you really want to spend the time to do that? And some of the previous comments that we've had about WannaCry is that it appears that WannaCry was less about the financial motivation than it was about some other stuff.
Making a splash. Yeah,
Making a splash.
Yeah.
So,
well, and as previous guests have said on the show too, larger organizations, enterprises, and governments pay Microsoft extra money to get fixes. So
there's a back and forth about whether or not that's worth it to them to make that happen. So, but still really interesting.
It said Windows XP with Service Pack 2, there was no infection. Service Pack 3, random blue screens of death. Windows 7, infected after multiple attempts. In Windows 2008, Service Pack 1 could not replicate infection, but reported exploited.
So why didn't we bring this up when we were talking about the problems of small businesses? Because small businesses are still using XP in various places, and obviously large industrial control systems are still relying on XP. Why are we still talking about XP?
Why are they still using XP?
Anyone?
Because they don't have a technology guy to come in and upgrade
with
them.
With a lot of small businesses, they upgrade operating systems when they replace their computer. So, my laptop is finally 6 years old and the hinges are broken and we go and buy a new one. So that's kind of when they upgrade and they have these older OSs. It's just how they run.
Longer that, we might be talking decade for some places. And in the case of the industrial control systems, sometimes they cannot get out of it. They've got software with a manufacturer. And I say manufacturer deliberately, a manufacturer that has got a mindset that they would build this software for 20 years. So, the dependencies they cannot get away from. I mean, it's like this is built to run on this kernel.
And you're bringing up something that I've been thinking about the last couple of weeks, which I think it's a philosophical issue. It's a generational issue, but my parents grew up in the Depression, and for the most part, when you invested in something, think IoT devices these days, when you bought a dishwasher, when you bought a refrigerator, you wanted to buy something that was going to last for 20 years.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because there's this cultural mindset that I think is partially generational, but to some degree, I'm still leaning towards that end of the spectrum. But when I buy something, I want it to last for a long time. I don't want to have to update it every year. I think that was like my grandfather
when my grandfather, long since passed. When he bought his truck, he wanted that thing to last forever. I mean, he literally drove that for my entire life that I knew my grandfather
would drive every car into the ground.
He
like
drove
literally
he
falling
drove,
apart,
he
driving in to trade it in.
And,
right?
and like it would rust over the wheel wells. So what he would do? He would go out and cut that section with the sawzall out, and he would pop rivet a new piece of either aluminum or steel over that thing, and then paint it
Right.
Explains a lot about your personality today, Larry, about where you came from.
It does. So much.
Honest,
So much.
So much.
How old is the underwear you're wearing? I mean, think about it.
I haven't worn any underwear in almost 20 years.
Assuming you wear it.
Wow, that is way too much information.
Because you know what? Why spend money on underwear? It's just going to fall apart.
You realize that
still
we're oftentimes not the reincarnation of our parents, but our grandparents.
Sometimes.
But my point is, though, somewhere along the line, the whole advancement in technology is, technology vendors, not just security vendors, have tried to create this sensation of we've got to update, we got to get something new. I mean, I think it started with mobile devices and phones, but nowadays people are conditioned to, my phone's a year old, I got to get a new one. Not so much with laptops, but we can wish for new laptops or tablets or whatever. But
You're saying it's our fault.
But I think it comes down. Well, I
think it's something we don't talk about or acknowledge enough. That I don't think there's anything wrong with the mindset of buying something that lasts for 20 years.
But there's also the pain point of rip and replace, right?
Yeah.
Well, there's two aspects of it, right? There's a pain point of rip and replace, and I think when you want to buy something that lasts, you want to minimize the cost that it is to rip and replace, and only have to do that when you absolutely need to. But there's also, we need to not think about, like, when we buy something, how long it's going to last. Today, when we buy something, we have to think about, okay, if it's going to last me this long, how long am I going to get updates for it? And how painful is it going to be to apply those updates? Can I apply updates for that time? Because so much of what we have today is software-based or firmware-based and can be updated. When we bought a dishwasher or any home appliance 20 or 30 years ago, none of that stuff was updated.
To go back to what Don was saying, you're describing an awareness that's not out there.
Correct. You're correct.
Where you go out and apply training, like knowing how to apply a patch or knowing how to turn on the update feature.
Well, no, it goes even further than that, though. There's a culture collision. I mean, you look at the SCADA situation, and in the days where you hooked these control systems up with serial cables, RS-232 or whatever, the ramifications of doing that were not nearly as serious as the ramifications of plugging an Ethernet cable in it, and people,
or a wireless network now,
right? And so that culture, the industrial control system culture, does not know. They just flat do not know the ramifications of doing what they're doing. Maybe with the exception of a subset, just a few. And apologies to anybody who's like yelling at me right now, but that is the real core of the issue, right? Air gapping is not necessarily a bad thing, but they just don't realize the ramifications of, we'll just plug it into our wireless network in the example that I talked about.
Part of the problem is, and it ties into one of our other stories here and personal experience that I have with a product, is that when you purchase a product, it's impossible to know how resilient that product is going to be over a period of time.
Yep.
You really don't know. I mean, you may know how long you're going to use it for, but if it's something that you know you're going to need for a long time, years, right? You don't know how resilient that product's going to be over time. So I purchased several years ago, maybe, a long time ago, a Readinise NV Plus, right? And I've talked about this device on the show before.
Yeah.
And it's a network-connected storage. It's a NAS device from Netgear. And when we were talking last week about the SMB vulnerability, the Samba vulnerability, rather, I was like, it's a Spark processor. Oh, God. I'm like, good luck developing a payload for it. I mean, you could, sure. Like you're...
Again, we go back to that Windows XP. Why would you develop
an exploit for it?
Yep.
And lo and behold, to my amazement, Netgear actually has an update for it. that patches the vulnerability. On Spark, particular that device with that firmware on Spark architecture.
Wow.
Now, I didn't know that, I don't know, 8 or 9 years later after I bought the device that I'd have to worry about applying patches and whether patches were going to be available or not. Like, it sits on my network and it serves files. Like, that's its purpose. It still does that to this day, whether it's vulnerable or not.
Yep.
And there's been all kinds of different vulnerabilities. It's been Nessa scanned, 8,000 times, over its
Or more.
lifetime, and identified vulnerabilities. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's a vulnerability, but it's Spark, so good luck getting a payload. And I've applied updates to it until the core updates start, but here's a major security vulnerability. Now, the crossroads that I'm at, which makes this conversation very interesting, the crossroads I'm at now is this device is working in my network today. It's old.
Yep.
I feel like it's somewhat fragile, but it's working.
Yep.
Do I take now new software and apply it to this device, which could potentially break it, which then this device is that hasn't been supported in a long time? Like, what do I do? Do I potentially put
Buy a new one.
a patch, right? Or do I buy a new one, right? And why would I buy a new one when the existing one it runs fine?
And
What would your
wait,
grandpa say?
and I want to throw this to Don to what would the small business do, Don?
Yeah, because this is a small business product. So I think Larry's going to.
So we're tech guys, and our tech problems are small business problems.
Yeah.
Well, and we're not touching on one important thing. You're lucky, Paul, that the vendor is still in business.
Right.
That can
Yes.
put out
Correct.
there.
You're correct,
Right.
Jeff. You're correct.
All right. Shut up and let Don talk.
Yeah. Okay. I think in an enterprise you can be proactive, right? You have budgets, you have plans. When you select hardware to purchase, you have a development or deployment life cycle.
Yep.
You have that going on. In a small business, you're not proactive. You're reactive, right? You're putting out fires. So they buy that storage appliance and they run it until it's dead. That's how it is. And firmware updates.
Storage appliances.
It's like my first car.
As it turns out, those storage appliances are really resilient, Don, to your point. Like, when the thing flashes that it's got a bad drive, I go buy one on Amazon for like $50 and I swap a new one in and it runs.
Yeah.
Well, that's true, but I know, like, I have one personally that you can tell the company threw together the easiest version of Linux they could to get on there, and all its logs are in Chinese, so you can't troubleshoot the damn thing.
Wonderful.
And for home, who cares, right? But for enterprise, for a business, that's not something that would ever fly. But for a small business, they're typically taking consumer technology, stuff they get at Best Buy, and deploying that in their business.
Yep.
And cell phones are a big problem with this too, because even enterprises, you get screwed there. Like, if a cell phone is not a successfully sold one, it's not going to be supported for any long window of time. But even Google with their Pixels, didn't they say they were going to cut that one at just a hair after 2 years? So that's the kind of window we're looking at with technology these days.
But that's a good point, because I think Google knows that their market for Pixel are people like me that are technology savvy and update their phones regularly anyway. I think Google has an interesting market position.
Yeah.
That, to your point, Don, it's a very good point, because while Google markets their Pixel towards very technology savvy people, they know they can have a short life cycle because that audience, that target market, is going to upgrade their phones. In other words, when I know as a Pixel user that Google's dropping support, even if it's 2 years, I never keep a phone for more than 2 years, a year at most, and I'm upgrading to the next thing. So, but when we look at the small business, the technology that's available to them, they're purchasing it not as a Google Pixel target market user. They're purchasing it, as you said, a small business user that's like, hey, I'm going to get this device. I'm going to use it for as long as I can to get the maximum value from my purchase. However,
this laptop right here,
the seller of that Chinese-based network-attached storage appliance is like, well, we just want to crank out devices as cheaply as possible. And if we come up with a new version that, hey, we're going to change the processor architecture, less than a year after we brought this first one to market because we saved $3 per device, we're going to do that. And we're not going to support the previous one because it costs us too much money to support the previous one. Now those other users are screwed, and that target audience is one that wants to use that device for a really long time.
Yep.
I think that's largely why we're in the situation we are today with small businesses in these purchasing decisions. So I think it's a fantastic point that everyone brought up.
Sweet.
Okay, transition to another story.
Another story. So, Paul, I had out of my 4, I put some really good ones in there. Out of those 4,
do that. I'm gonna go to the bathroom.
I'd love to do
I'll be
3.
right back. So,
yes,
Thanks
You
for
got to pee. Got to pee.
Paul is leaving the show.
Yeah, Paul's got to pee. So the first story I had in there was from one of our sponsors, and it was one of those requests that this was literally a story I was reading as we were on the show last week. Like the last 15 minutes of the show, I was reading the story as it was coming out, and it's the Operation Cobalt Kitty.
Okay.
The large-scale APT in Asia carried out by the Ocean Lotus Group. And it was very interesting stuff. So this was, in fact, an analysis of the Cobalt Kitty operation by Cybereason, who, in full disclosure, is a sponsor. I've put the request, and I've seen the request go out to Cybereason to talk to the folks that actually were involved in this analysis of the Ocean Lotus Group Operation Cobalt Kitty. And quite honestly, for me as a red teamer, it's absolutely fantastic. In that,
Larry,
Yes.
just a quick question.
Yeah.
The Cobalt reference.
oh yeah,
Is that a
Oh, yeah.
reference to Cobalt Strike?
yes, it is. I would argue that it is, given that some of the command and control that was used in this specific attack was Cobalt Strike.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and that was my question when I was reading this. We were talking about this, and I said, "Well, doesn't Raphael Mudge vet who he sells Cobalt Strike to?" And because based on my interaction with him, it was, "Hey, who do you work for? You know, all this stuff. Oh yeah, great. I know you guys. You're good. Everything's good." But there are so many operations where potentially somebody else could have been compromised and license keys could have been acquired.
Right.
You talk about some of the stuff. Cobalt Strike was involved. The analysis of some of the traffic that were there for some Cobalt Strike beacon stuff was interesting. The fact that where was it? Cobalt Kitty operators from the name is escaping.
did you say Cobalt Kitty?
Yeah,
operator?
I did Cobalt Kitty.
So these are people that acquire Cobalt Strike and use it for.
Amongst others, and this is the analysis from Cybereason folks that I want them to come on and talk about.
Oh, okay. You mentioned that. Yeah. They're a sponsor, so yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so some of the stuff is that the folks that were using Cobalt Strike didn't understand how some of the functionality actually worked, which helped them
Hence
get caught.
the moniker Script Kitty.
Yep, exactly. So I thought this was a fantastic analysis, and I don't want to blow the wad, so to speak, for the Cybereason folks, assuming we can get them on, because
we can.
This was absolutely amazing, some of the stuff that they did, and I have questions for them about what they did and how they did it. Coming from the defender side, because I'm very much we very much do red team, and this is some of the stuff they did, and want to talk to them about this whole analysis. So this was some awesome stuff.
Absolutely. Hey, Paul. You think we can get them on somewhere in the next couple of weeks?
We have the request in.
Yeah.
I know. I saw it from Sam
absolutely.
today.
Fantastic.
Great bunch of folks at Cybereason. Yeah, no, that's Israel
that would be
Barak,
real.
who's been on the show
Yes.
multiple times on on Pulse Security Weekly and on other shows. It works at Cybereason. So,
So another quick one, Paul. I know you were just coming back from taking a dump. No, you just pee.
I had to go pee.
I
have like the world's smallest bladder.
I've got 2 self-serving posts here. One of them from InGuardians. We just redid our entire website, but one of the first things...
Nginx and WordPress?
No, WordPress and Apache.
There you go.
Close. But JB,
Emacs?
but Jay Beal's got
I
this
used
awesome
VI.
post that I got to help tech edit and stuff as it went out, and it's part 1 of some stuff that he's been doing, which is awesome. And it was very much WordPress. So we talked about WordPress earlier in the show. So one of the things that Jay has been doing is he's been pulling down a bunch of these sort of offline CTF type stuff. And one of the ones he pulled down was a CTF that is Mr. Robot themed. This one it deals with WordPress. And he started going through it, and he's like, I broke this, and I can think of some ways to defend against it. So he's literally taking these CTFs And he's taking the instruction about how to break the CTF, how to win the CTF, or how to go through the CTF. And then on the converse is, well, you just broke this. This is how you broke this. And these are the methods you'd use. How would I defend against that?
That's awesome.
And
That's
building
awesome.
building profiles on these
Yeah.
CTF images to defend against it. And this particular one is password spraying and password brute forcing against WordPress. And he builds an OSSec profile to do IP tables rules after failed login attempts for the WordPress admin.
Well, it's a very defendable problem with WordPress.
Right.
Right.
But this is not necessarily using a WordPress plugin.
It's
This is
offloading it
using
from WordPress.
This is using OSSec.
I like that because you take a performance hit when you do some of that stuff in
Absolutely.
WordPress. So.
Absolutely. And this is eventually using IP tables rules to do denies.
I like that. I
Yeah.
like that because
Yeah.
that is a much better usage of system resources doing it in IP
Yes.
tables than WordPress. It's just lower in the stack.
Yes,
I like it. I like
absolutely, absolutely. And this is part one of a multi-part series, so there's some more of that.
Fantastic, dude.
Yep.
One of the many reasons why I love Jay is for his deep knowledge of Linux and Linux hardening. And along those lines, there was a very interesting, and I haven't processed all of the exact details. Have you guys seen the sudo vulnerability?
So I read this and I immediately dismissed that this is, if you've got sudo access, you've got root access. What's the big deal? This is a fake news story.
Yeah.
And
Larry, that's what it was designed for, right?
yeah, exactly.
Sudo is. Anyway.
Well, no, I mean,
That's not necessarily true, right?
the larger.
with sudo,
Go ahead,
you can actually limit people to a particular set of commands, right?
Exactly.
That's what makes this risky is in those scenarios.
If they're aware that you can configure it like that.
Oh,
Right, right.
Yeah, and you're right, Jeff, and Don both.
So please enlighten me.
Well, the intended usage of sudo that I think is a much better from a security perspective is I want to, like Don said, limit it to users that can execute specific commands. Largely, as Jeff pointed out, people use it to basically delineate between root user and non-root user, well, there's the actual root
it's
user.
It's a way to do things that you have to do as root without logging on to the root
Correct.
account,
Correct.
which you shouldn't do on a daily basis.
Right,
And-
which does
and-
offer
and
some protection.
And with varying level of access control.
yes.
Yep.
So this
And logging.
Yeah.
the vulnerability is a user with sudo privileges can cause sudo to use a device number of the user's choosing by creating a symbolic link from the sudo binary to a name that contains a space followed by a number. Ooh. Still digging into the details exactly how that works. It's pretty
Like
cool.
a number like 0.
There are patches available for it. Red Hat and Debian, SUSE, as well as others have issued patches for it. So my recommendation would be to apply those patches.
Not use sudo. No. Apply the patches.
No, apply those patches. Apply those patches.
Of course.
Yes.
Well, I think this was not like super critical because of the way most people use sudo. If you're using it just to give root access to somebody, then this is kind of really not a big deal.
Right.
But if you are using it in that use case scenario of I've given somebody access so that they can sudo a particular command, this would give them a chance to go beyond that command. That's where it's really critical this gets updated.
Yeah, I had a customer one time that was using sudo to su.
Yeah.
You can do it.
You can.
And it took me a long time to explain it to him why that was kind of not a
You know what's
why it was a
interesting
bad
though is that a lot of times sudo space su space minus is a better command than because it sets up the environment properly.
Yes.
And you tend to run into less issues.
Oh God.
Yes.
Setting the environment properly
is a big deal. It's a big deal.
It's a big deal. Yeah.
I want to talk about one login.
And after that, I do have one other story I would love to cover because you'll like this. You'll like
I
this.
want to
It's a
make sure we
surprise.
hit. I want to hit one login.
Yep.
I want to hit OAuth, and I want to hit Larry's story.
Yeah.
One login. This is a
Yes.
And I want to hit Chipotle too. So we have 4 stories to talk about before we end. Jeff, that was your story that I want to get to as well. One log. This is a really bad breach. I don't have all the details as to how and all that stuff. I do know that I am a LastPass user. I'm a former 1Password user. I've been skeptical of these password managers, skeptical of single sign-on applications for really this reason. As OneLogin sent an email to their customers that basically said bad things have happened, and here's what we need you to do: generate new certificates for your apps that use SAML SSO, generate new keys for legacy API and OAuth, generate new directory tokens, generate new SSO tokens and credentials. If you replicate your directory password to provision applications, force a password reset, recycle any secrets and secure notes, credentials for users provisioning into third-party applications, form-based login credentials, and radius shared secret. Basically, like redo everything in your one login because there was a massive data breach. It could be the I don't know. It depends on the audience and the users of one login. Very well could be like a company ending vulnerability when you are the company providing single sign-in type services like that, and you have this massive breach. You've completely depleted the trust with your user base and put yourself in a sticky situation. Very different, I think, from the LastPass vulnerabilities. They were very responsive. They were not nearly as devastating as this vulnerability. Glad that I used LastPass. I also put two-factor authentication on LastPass. In this case with OneLogin, I'm not sure if that mattered or not. And again, two-factor authentication isn't like Magic Pixie. Remember the Magic Pixie Dust commercials?
I do.
Yeah. It's not Magic Pixie Dust for security. It does help, though. So this is really bad.
Right.
Has anyone else looked into this OneLogin thing? Like, it seems really bad to me.
The only thing I've got is the stories that were published, which is along the lines of what you just said, Paul. We've had a breach. It's U.S. centric. There's nothing else that I could see that had any more details. But the net result is for everybody out there: change everything. Change master passwords. Change all your passwords on every stored site. I mean, make sure that you update everything because this is serious.
Yeah, and OneLogin isn't like OneLogin is more single sign-on competing with Okta than it is a password vault. Don?
I did find it interesting. They mentioned like the secure notes feature where like maybe you've turned on multiple factor authentication and you have those recovery keys. So you stored them in a secure note that was secured by single sign or by one login, that you have to consider those compromised now. So in your recovery keys, and in the case of 2FA or MFA, you're going to have to turn that off and turn it back on again to generate all new keys, and that causes a lot of problems in systems.
Oh yeah,
just all throughout. So that's a big deal.
Absolutely. Larry, what do you got for your story?
Oh, so the other one was this one you will actually find interesting because of the way it went down. The other one that I've got in there is decoding DECT, digital enhanced cordless telephone with an RTL SDR. This popped up in my feed, and I missed it for a couple of days.
This is DECT is baby monitors.
Baby monitors and a lot of headsets and cordless phones.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. I challenge you.
We've talked about this on the show.
Oh, yeah.
Like way back in the day.
Well, so here's the deal. So the deal is that in order to deal with DECT and whether or not the calls are encrypted, you actually have to capture traffic and decode it and see if you can listen to it. And we did this with some demos with your baby monitors.
Yeah.
And we do this in the SAN 617 course all the time.
Right.
But it
and there's no FCC regulations that dictate the being able to capture this traffic?
Nope.
Okay.
It's specific
an
ranges.
Is it an open spectrum?
It is in ISM bands that don't require license and so forth.
Okay.
But it's in weird stuff. It's not 2.4 and 5.
It's weird. Yeah.
So it's and I don't remember. I think it's 1.8 to 1.92 depending on where you are on the planet, and which is ISM.
It's somewhere between 900 megahertz and 2.4.
It's 1.8 to 1.92 depending on where you are.
Like I said, between 900 megahertz and 2.4.
You're right.
Right. Okay.
But it requires some very specialty hardware to analyze.
Yep.
And that hardware has become harder and harder to acquire, and we've talked about software-defined radio. And now this post says, hey, if you have an RTL SDR, that $20 to $30 software-defined radio, you can potentially capture DECT traffic. And you can capture DECT traffic and dump it to PCAP. Now
these are monitors, Larry, that like if I have a baby monitor on at home, they're essentially like listening devices
they're always
in
on.
my home. They're always on.
They're
right?
always on.
Yeah, okay.
Now, baby monitor, whatever, home.
Headset.
DECT, cordless telephone.
Yes.
You go to buy a cordless telephone, go to Staples. try to buy a cordless telephone. Tell me what type of technologies are available on the shelf. There are two. There are Bluetooth and there are DECT. And there's one Bluetooth and everything else is DECT.
Wait. There's one manufacturer that's producing a Bluetooth.
They're just across the board.
Oh, like when you walk in the store.
The two technologies.
Yeah.
Now you go to call center and you say, oh, your call center folks want a headset because talking on the phone, like crimping in the ear.
And they wouldn't use a wired headset because
I don't know. Everybody wants the wireless stuff because it's cool. So what do? You go to the local like W. Mason catalog or whatever your vendor is, and what are the two types of headsets you've got?
Bluetooth and DECT.
Bluetooth and DECT, and which one's fucking cheaper?
DECT.
Bingo.
Yep.
Wow.
So now there was a barrier to entry to capturing DECT traffic. Your call center talks about lots of fun stuff. Now this gentleman has said, hey, we can capture DECT with a $20 to $30 software-defined radio.
There was a story that we covered, Larry.
No, wait. I'm going to blow your mind. So they say you can capture DECT traffic with a software-defined radio that costs you between $20 and $30. It dumps it to PCAP. They say, well, great, we want the audio. Well, they said you can dump the audio by taking the B channel and dumping it to a file and then playing it back with this audio codec. Well, how did we find that out? Well, we went to this Reddit thread that said, hey, we went to Security Weekly episode 158, and they've got instructions on how to do so.
Beautiful. That's beautiful.
Boom!
I was going to say,
so
hold
I'm
on, Jeff.
seeing a
Back
demo.
in that time, we covered a story, and I want to say it was from Pentest Monkey blog. You remember that guy?
I do.
And they told the story, and I believe it was 900 megahertz frequency that they were listening to.
We do.
They picked up on because the headsets of the call center and various employees were all 900 megahertz. They sat in the parking lot
with a scanner.
Police scanner. Basically for X number of days listening to their traffic, gleaned enough information from that traffic to essentially create an employee. So they then, like the next week, created an employee, business cards, the whole, and had an armed that employee with enough information about the company. That employee, that person from the Pentest company walked in. I'm a new employee. They set that person up with a desk. That person worked there for, I want to say, about a week. Attended birthday parties for employees.
Yeah. They sat at a desk. Yep.
Sat at a desk, plugged into the network, essentially worked there for an entire week. And that was, to me, one of the most compelling stories we've covered on this issue.
I will say, I tech edited a book for Singress that was on exactly those subjects about doing
Wireshark?
Nope, not
No.
Wireshark.
Okay.
And it's crazy. I can't remember the name of the book, but I tech edited a book from he was one of the guys at Secure State that has since moved on. Epic hipster beard, mustache. No.
Okay.
Boy Bullock.
No, it wasn't Bo. Bo didn't work for Secure State, and I'm totally embarrassed that I can't remember the name. But I tech edited a book that was literally was basically using RF for pen testing, and it was very much these types of things that were RF outside of wireless.
Yeah.
And outside of the standard protocols that you'd think about, like how do you deal with like the security radios at 900 megahertz and all this crap?
It's great.
And it was
people don't. I mean, talk about things that enterprises don't pay attention to.
Yeah. Yep.
Certainly
You
one
know
of
what?
them.
I feel like we should do a demo. I mean, I think I've got a DECT cordless phone in the house.
Joff, it's coming, and it may be coming to a SANS course near you.
There you go.
Oh, baby.
No, that should totally be.
No, we should do. Seriously, we should do a live demo where I pick up a DECT handset, make the call, and we should freaking show the packets and make it happen.
We will.
Yeah.
Count
Just
on
for
it.
you, Jeff.
Count on it. Episode 150.
We should produce an entire podcast that we did over a DECT frequency that we captured the traffic and then replayed it.
God.
And the sound quality would be awesome.
You're such a nerd.
So literally,
Riley is like literally cringing in his seat.
So the RTLSDR.com blog, an RTLSD DECT decoder update over the Reddit thread from the original poster. In theory, you only need to dump the B field data into a file and then play with the G726 codec. see documentation from previous dedected projects.
Wait, does that link work? Please tell me that link doesn't
That link
work.
fucking works.
Okay, good. Yes,
Yep,
winning,
From
winning.
WikiSecurityWeekly.com, episode 158, in which we talk about sniffing deck for fun and penetration testing with Larry Pesci.
Oh, thank
In
God
which
that
we-
link
we-
works. That
we-
means I've done my job.
Which we talk about installing the deck CLI stuff, and then the final caveat is a script for converting pcapt and dumping bfield into a file which we can play with a codec.
That's awesome. I'm so glad the link
Fucking
works.
boom! I'm like, like this is
fabulous.
my crowning moment. Like I took shit that somebody else did and put it with somebody's shit what somebody else did, and I tied it together.
And documented it, and other people are winning from it. That's
Yes.
awesome.
It's
I want
brilliant.
to talk about not winning with OAuth. And I haven't checked out the entire talk. There are slides posted about OAuth nightmares. And
Yes.
I want to use this as basically a talking point that I hate OAuth. OAuth is kind of like the
I love
you know
and
what
hate
it is? It's the friggin' sudo for web applications. Is what it is. That's exactly what it is when you think about it, and it frightens me to death. The guys are like, well, we need to authorize like our internal application to like Twitter and Facebook, and it's all in Google, and it's all friggin' OAuth. And not only is the configuration a nightmare, after I configure it, like I feel dirty. Being a security professional and configuring like trust relationships with OAuth,
Yes.
I feel dirty. I'm like, this is bad. Something bad's gonna it's bad. My gut reaction is bad.
Bad.
That's my take on OAuth. It's bad. And quite
No,
frankly,
it's good, but it's bad.
But quite frankly, a lot of the abuses that we've talked about with social networks. In fact, there was a story last week or the week before that people were tweeting as someone else's Twitter account. That was totally an OAuth abuse, and we've covered stories like that in the past where essentially people have lost control of their site. And again, this also speaks to how two-factor authentication doesn't fucking help you in this situation, because it's not about your password. It's about basically you've given someone permission with this magical token that says you can do shit with my account, and people just take that over. Mm-hmm. So I'm very OAuth does give me nightmares. It really does.
I think the real challenge there is it's complex, right? And if it's done improperly, you are really opening yourself up to a big risk. But if it's done properly, it's really powerful. It's a great secure solution.
Agreed. This again comes back to the whole we've developed a secure solution. It's all about how you implement it.
Yes.
Yep.
Agreed. I mean, because you can very easily lose your, like, how do you protect those client secrets and OAuth IDs, right?
Right.
Because when
you put those in a world readable directory, then well, you're fucked.
yeah,
And then you put them on an SVN repository and you stick them up on your production web server, and that's a perfect place.
But, you know, Joff, that's a fantastic point. I think there's an entire tech segment, or maybe 5, that talks about how you
Don't fuck
back up your code or your configuration
Oh my
files
god, yes.
without exposing that level of information. Because there are a lot of, just in the small subset of systems that we have today, I do local system file versioning, and I'm like, I really need to get like a Git or SVN repository and like store this stuff somewhere. But I'm like, if I'm automatically backing up my config files and doing versioning on them, if that ever becomes public, it's essentially like handing over the keys to the kingdom, because inside these config files, there could be passwords, there could be
AWS keys,
OAuth tokens, and there's the token ID, but then there's the secret passphrase that gives that application access. It's almost like in a Windows environment, you have system-level accounts.
Paul, I've had pen tests where I have had an SVN repository that has been uploaded to a server. It has been, they thought anyway, sanitized by removing the files from the repository, but you can reconstruct the original source from the hashes. Okay, and there's documentation on there. It's actually, I think, a Security Weekly post where there's documentation on this.
Yep.
And I've actually retrieved an Amazon API key, which I have then used directly against the entity that I was testing to access their entire file system.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah. So, Joff, same thing. I developed because I wanted to, show down with Ed. Ed's got his, Morse code tweeting bot at home that I wanted to do the same, but I wanted to do them one up, and I wanted to display the user's avatar and a LED panel when it was doing the Morse code of the tweet to me and so forth and so on. And the code that I had required a Twitter OAuth token. Yep. And when I published the code, I published it as, insert your own token here. So I didn't fuck that up, believe it or not.
Yeah, nice. No, you'd be surprised. Developers actually inadvertently include their tokens actually in the freaking source
in the code.
Yeah,
Joff, I ran into a situation last week where I went into the configuration file for the application. I updated the OAuth tokens and secrets, and then it wasn't working. And I'm like, knowing this, I'm like, you know what? I'm like, I bet you it's hard-coded in the code. I dug through the code, and I'm like, oh, look,
sure enough,
they're not even reading the configuration file. They've just included it in the code. And, I had this, forehead moment. I'm like,
face palm.
I'm like, it's so bad because then this code, configuration files in your build scripts and stuff, right? You're going to know that there's stuff in there that you want to take out, and not just for security, but because development, QA, and production might have a different set of credentials for OAuth. In other words, in development, I'm doing OAuth to a different account, and in production, I'm doing OAuth to a different account. But your code, that just goes, and it's very scary. OAuth is very scary.
Yep.
It's kind of like encryption, Jeff. You're laughing, right? But it's kind of like encryption. Encryption's great, but it's all about the implementation, and I think that's where the vulnerabilities are in OAuth is in the implementation.
Yes, I can agree with that.
All right. Was there something else we wanted to talk? Oh, Jeff, we need to talk about Chipotle really quick.
Yeah. Thanks for saving so much time for it.
Sorry.
Well, there have been a couple breaches announced recently, Chipotle and Kmart as well. And Kmart, it's like their second time in 3 years. It's still
wait.
malware.
Kmart's still in business?
Yep. It's also in the notes.
Yeah,
wow.
It is.
Point of sale malware. We probably should have talked about this when we were talking about XP.
Don. Well,
but
definitely
the point I want to make is one of the articles I posted was like a local radio, TV station for that wanted to do a story on the Chipotle breach, and the title of the article was something about time to update to the chip cards. And even looking at Krebs's article on the Kmart, the very first comment is, "Wow, glad I use a chip card all the time." People, the mag stripe data that's on a credit card is almost entirely the same data that's on the chip, and it's not encrypted on the chip. The authorization, the security code is what's different about the chip, preventing, in theory, the card from being cloned and used to commit fraud. You can still capture all the same data, even with point-of-sale malware, and you can still use that data to commit fraud on a website that's not asking for the security code.
Yeah.
And people don't seem to get that. So I just wanted to hammer that home.
Chip and signature is useless because now if I capture your card via magstripe, I can change the magstripe to say, there's no chip in this card. You'll use the magstripe.
Yep.
And
it's a little bit trickier, but you can force that.
No, it's not tricky at all. It's not. If you can swipe it, it's fairly easy documented to know which the value is to set 1 or 0 to say this is chip enabled or not chip enabled. And now I just use the magstripe and done.
So ridiculous. Why didn't we go chip and pin? It's like
where's Jack when you need him?
Where's Jack?
Well, one of the real issues is that things have been delayed, and not to point fingers at any vertical in the industry, but I was having a conversation earlier today with some other people. The fuel industry, you notice if you go fill your car with gas, you're not doing a chip yet. because
Right.
I don't think it's technically possible to replace the card readers, the point of interaction devices in a pump without replacing the whole pump. So that's a
Is that
huge.
true? Is that
that's-
really
that's
true? Is that really true?
Fucking lies.
I think it's true, but I'm not.
Because no, hold
I
on,
think
hold on. Jeff has a point though. If you think about when you go to the gas pump, there is only a magstripe reader inside.
Yeah.
Physically, there is only a magstripe reader. There is no.
Let's put it this way: every other store that I've been to has only had a magstripe reader, and now they have magstripe and pin.
Because they can replace that, but Larry, they can replace that whole physical device.
Yeah,
But when it's inside of a gas pump,
they're modular.
yeah, but you have to retrofit
Well,
the
they
module
are
to
and
have
they
a
aren't
chip
because
reader
the
and a strip reader.
It's modular. You put it in and you leave it there, or you put it in and you swipe.
It depends on the
it's not
vendor.
that
It
simple.
depends on the vendor. Jeff's partially correct. Some cases, he's absolutely right. That you cannot replace the reader without replacing
because
the pump.
it's inside
In
of another
cases,
device.
You can forget
You do not have to replace the entire pump. You have to retrofit the existing pump.
The module, but
in
that's
the
a lot more.
in the modular portion.
But that's a lot more expensive.
But
No.
but that modular
it is
portion-
because-
The pump
the-
part is the expensive part,
Yeah, but there's more pumps than there are registers.
right? So you think about it, you pull up to the
No,
pump. There's the
maybe
part
not.
that dispenses the gas, and there's all this crap, and then there's this small part that does the processing and talks to the.
Do you think
the
they
house.
designed them though so they could fit a chip reader and a magstripe?
Oh, you got to replace the whole front panel part
Yeah.
that does that, and there's some challenges, but it is modular.
I disagree, Larry, because we're talking about the point of introduction device. We're
Yeah,
not talking about point of sale. The point of sale is usually in a controller that's either in the kiosk or it's inside if it's a convenience store or whatever.
I would.
And it's tied to the fuel delivery system, so
Right.
it's software that's all
Right.
combined together. I don't think it's as modular as you think it is.
I would argue that the point of delivery device is very similar to the point of sale device in that you literally do not have to rip the gas station apart to replace the entire pump with the handle and all this stuff. There is some portion that you have to replace, but you don't have to replace this entire thing that goes floor to ceiling. It's modular from this device that says dispense gas. Gas comes out of this hose. You don't have to replace the gas comes out of this hose part. You have to replace here's the part where I interface with the station attendant and the card versus replacing this whole $10,000 device. You have to replace this $2,000 device.
It's still a lot more work.
But that
It's still a lot more
$2,000
work,
device
time, and
has
money
gotta
to
fit in the pump, and it's got to
Right.
talk to
Agreed.
the software that's running the $10,000.
It's more expensive to
Absolutely.
do that than it is to replace something at the register.
Absolutely. The option is you replace something at the register. Now everybody has to come inside, and that sucks. And
Yeah, that's not going to work for gas stations.
No. And agreed. You can choose.
And again, I'm not trying to pick on the fuel industry.
no,
I'm just
no,
saying
not
that's
at all.
one example.
I don't know. I will
The
pick on
fuel
the
industry has got a 2 or 3 more years before they have to implement chip. They're going to do it.
And Jeff,
but they've been allowed.
I
I
totally
think they're
agree.
using that 2 or 3 years to move people towards an app that's specific to that organization and that company, or a card that's specific to so you can get like Cumberland Farms, you can get their app.
Right.
I don't know. I don't have their app because I hate installing per merchant apps on my phone when there's like Apple
part of
Pay,
the problem.
Android Pay. Right, that's a whole other conversation, right? But they could conceivably say, well, we're just going to leave magstripe readers and we're going to have a wireless reader in there.
And I hate to say this. Think about backwards compatibility. Someone like my mom, who just turned 74 years old. Smartphone.
Happy birthday, Mom.
Yeah, smartphone literally doesn't exist.
Yeah.
She has a jitterbug that makes phone calls. She can't go up to a pump and go bing and
Right.
pay. She needs to have a card, or she needs to go inside and pay with cash or check.
Hey, if there was a gas station that accepted Android Pay,
You'd be all over that shit.
that's totally fine. Android Pay is already configured on my phone. Done.
Yep.
Of course, there was that whole thing about having your cell phone activated.
Yeah, there's that.
There's a Mythbusters episode. All
and
right.
it's more technology that they have to put in the pump, and it
With
costs
that,
money.
we're going to conclude this episode of Paul's Security Weekly. Thank you, everyone,
this
for
has been
participating. Thank you from Don from IT Pro for guest hosting as well as all of our regular hosts. Larry, take us out.
Over. And
And
bourbon.